So pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the opening meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the North Reading School Committee is virtual. No in-person attendance or members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. This is just a reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so virtually. If I could take a roll call of the school committee members who are present. Mr. Buckley.
Present.
Ms. Imbriano.
Present.
Ms. Boutwell.
Present.
Mr. Papavasilio.
Present.
Mr. McGowan.
Present.
Thank you. So the first item on the order, and the reason why I am speaking, is that we need to do a reorganization following the committee elections. So I would take at this time nominations for the chair of the school committee and the vice chair of the school committee.
If Mr. Buckley would so choose, I would nominate him to retain the chair.
I would be happy to.
I'll second the nomination.
All those in favor, Ms. Imbriano,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Ms. Boutwell,
Aye.
Mr. Papavasilio,
Aye.
Mr. Buckley.
Aye. Thank you all.
Congratulations. Would you like to take over with the rest, Mr. Buckley?
Sure. And we're not going to do subcommittees right now. We'll just do the officers. So I'll entertain motions for anybody that would like to be vice chair this year.
Having a conversation, I would like to nominate Rich McGowan as vice chair. I think he'll do a lovely job.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote on the nomination of Mr. McGowan. Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. And Rich, will you vote for yourself?
Aye.
Okay. 5-0.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. I'll entertain nominations for secretary this year. I don't know if anybody.
Oh, I'll step up because it's a really hard job.
There we go.
Then I will nominate Janine for the office of secretary.
Second.
Okay. Anybody else interested? Okay. On the nomination of Mrs. Imbriano. Rich?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. And Janine?
Okay, twist my arm. I'm an aye.
Okay. And then legislative representative. We're looking at either Diana or Chris, one of you.
I'm happy to stay as it if you'd like me to stay. I'm more than happy.
I would like to nominate Diana Botwell as legislative representative.
I second.
Okay, any other nominations? So on the motion to nominate Diana, we'll go through Janine,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Rich,
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, and Diana.
Aye.
Excellent, 5-0. We have our officers. Thank you, everybody. And later on, since we have a lot of people on, we're going to just put later on, we'll talk about subcommittee assignments and also talk about who's going to be negotiating the North Reading teachers contract this year as well. But we have a lot of people with us tonight, so I want to move on to the agenda. So first item is always public input. If there's any comments or if there's any questions or comments or thoughts on something that is not on the agenda, we will make sure if the public wants to speak on the agenda items, I'll make sure that people have the opportunity to do that. But if there's any public comment on something that's not on our agenda, I will pause for a moment here. Okay, hearing none, we're going to begin with our student report, and then we'll go on to some of the other matters. So we are very fortunate to have Shivani Shrikant with us tonight. Shivi, would you like to give your student report?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everybody. Hope we're all staying safe. I'm the student representative for today's meeting. And although there isn't like a lot of school-related things to be talking about right now, as we're not in school, I thought I would talk a little bit about some of the things within the town that I've been involved in and how the student population has been involved as a whole. So I'll start by talking a little bit about the reopening committee, where I'm a student helping to represent the opinions of my peers in North Reading and their ideas regarding school opening in the face of COVID-19. So far, I'm one of the many stakeholders in this committee, and together we're discussing the school policies surrounding the pandemic, and we contribute some rough ideas about potential school reopening formats. Recently, the group reviewed, added to, and vetted a town survey, which was sent out to parents. And in a subsequent meeting, the results of this survey were analyzed with regard to the current reopening trajectory. As a student, I found this experience really interesting, and I love hearing the opinions and concerns of multiple town members. I've also been collecting some informal student opinions on subjects often discussed in our reopening group meetings. For example, my peers' ideas on safety and mask wearing. And I plan on compiling these statements and giving them to Dr. Daly so he can see some other student opinions besides my own. Now I'll move on to another committee that has sprung up in recent times, the newly formed Racial Justice Committee. I was once again one of the many attendees of the first meeting of this committee and was pleasantly surprised by the civil conversation and constructive conversations that went on. As a group, we talked about how North Reading, among many other towns, could become even more inclusive and increase education on racial matters. The whole experience itself was very stimulating, and I was particularly excited to share my own views on the matter as well. Now I'll talk a little bit about student activity this summer and my own activities that I've been partaking in. Recently, a group of North Reading youth, including myself, came together to create the group North Reading Youth for Anti-Racism, or NRY4A. We worked together as a group to plan a march that took place this past Saturday at Ipswich River Park, and I personally had a really good time recruiting members for this group and organizing the march. Currently, I'm acting as the group's donations organizer, manning our donation stream, and I also had the privilege of reading a speech I wrote at the march as well. The group, run by recent NRHS grads, is thinking of planning other events in the future, which we will showcase on our social media pages. Personally, I've been keeping busy with a summer internship and some socially distanced softball, and that's about it.
Thank you very much, Lizzie. Any committee members have any comments or questions?
I've listened in on the meetings that she talked about, and she is a very brilliant girl, and her insight is very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would also say that in our meeting at 4 o'clock, we were talking about the role, like the goals for next year, and I think one of the things that I really wanted was to hear more students, and so I'm hoping that we are going to talk to the student reps about, maybe modifying the role a little bit and encouraging, students to participate in more of the topics that we as a school committee vote on, because frankly, I think it's very important to hear from the students, and I think you've done a great job in the working groups to, give your opinions, but also, like you said, pull other people as well. And so with that in mind, I will also encourage you, if you'd like to stay on for the first couple of topics that we're talking about, if you have time. You don't feel obligated, but if you'd like to, you've been part of those groups, and so would love to have your input, even more.
Yeah, I can definitely stay a little bit longer.
Any other comments from the committee?
Shivi, you said you gave a speech on Saturday?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to share it through Dr. Daly? So that people might take a look?
Yeah, of course. I'll definitely send it to him soon.
I'd love to read it.
Yeah.
Is it the work the article that you wrote? Because I read that you're there too.
I adapted that article and read it at the march. Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Shivi.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So we're going to move on, and the first two topics both relate to reopening. And so I see, Dr. Daly, you put digital learning update on. Do you think it makes most sense to start with the digital learning update or the COVID update and reopening plan?
I think the digital learning update as it relates to reopening, I think Dr. Downs is ready to present something, so I thought I would bring him on. He's here.
Okay, I see Dr. Downs. Turn it over to you, Dr. Downs.
How is everybody? It's great to see everybody, even if it's virtually. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and put my presentation also in the chat as a link if you want to follow along. My goal is really, with this presentation, just to give a little update to, some of the work we've done in the digital learning department over the last couple of months and kind of give some of the, the insights from the digital learning side of just, kind of behind the scenes. So I'm going to go to my presentation. Okay. So thank you, everyone. It's interesting to do a July update. I think it's an interesting time of year. Usually we're very busy, preparing Chromebooks and preparing for the new year. And this is definitely a new era in education I think we're entering. But it's coming out of, a very transformative time as well, where, digital learning is definitely at the forefront of a lot of people's minds in terms of how we're delivering education. So I appreciate the time tonight to be able to share some of my thoughts. So with more than just remote learning, we do have a lot of different topics that kind of relate to digital learning from an instructional and also curriculum standpoint that I want to make sure that with our team that we didn't let fall off the radar. And we've been very effective at kind of keeping all the moving parts of digital learning together, even as we've been trying to support remote learning the best we can, and also support our teachers the best we can with their needs, and also with other staff with their needs, as we kind of, go through this interesting time in education where remote learning and online learning resources are of the utmost priority. Some of the larger strategic digital learning initiatives that I think we want to still keep out in the light is that there's computer science and robotics curriculum and course development. We have that happening not only in the high school seminar, but really heavily within the middle school, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but also in the elementary, where we've introduced a number of robotics platforms and programs in the last couple of years. We're also continuing to try to expose students to STEAM and STEM integration through speakers, our STEM night, our STEAM night, and also Hour of Code activities, of course. And we're also in the planning stages of our next one-to-one rollout, our one-to-one learning, and also our ties with the Maple Organization for Personalized Learning, and how all of those moving parts come together. Of course, we're also working steadily reviewing all that we may need to do as it relates to remote learning, and preparing not only the devices and also reviewing resources for educators and staff as we move to more potential remote or hybrid-based learning. And in the big picture, we're always continuing at looking at supporting and maintaining our infrastructure of not only the digital resources, but our connectivity and security across the district. This includes E-rate to help support some of our Wi-Fi access points, filtering and support, data privacy initiatives, and also streamlining our student portal for resources, and also updating it consistently. Our digital learning staff is also moved into almost a new phase where we have a new level of outreach with the community, a new opportunity to share the work with digital learning tools. And also, we had a lot of great department-based and professional development work that happened prior to even moving to remote learning. And as always, we're really looking to support the teachers' use of technology. So some key notes on remote learning. I've had some time to kind of reflect since we moved to remote learning in March, and we've had, several transformative experiences, which I think in the long run will support our staff as much as it's been, taken some time to get us, up to full ramping speed with how remote learning can kind of best support people. we're really steadily working on identifying digital resources to support remote blended and learning instructional models. And we also look to best prepare educators, parents, and students with how to use the tools to best support students, and also to help students also use these tools. Utilizing webinars was a huge benefit that we had during remote learning. I think we had parent webinars, we had teacher webinars, we had staff webinars. It was amazing to be able to connect with almost all educators on some level or another with how they were working to best support the students in North Reading. And it really enhanced our ability to think strategically for remote technical support and supporting teachers with the tools that they were being asked to use. We were able to expand our learning opportunities through the technology, and I really felt like staff had tremendous insights and deep conversations around how these tools can be used. And just to share two resources that kind of came from that time was our extended learning website, which was a great resource for not only early on remote learning with resources to help support parents at home, but also providing resources for helping teachers and parents access some of the Google Apps for Education, and also just notifying parents, staff, educators of just a variety of best practices to help support them while they're working from home. Another page is the digital learning video page, and if you get an opportunity to visit that page, that is a page of video tutorials created by the digital learning staff to help support very specific niche areas for both educators and parents in regards to remote learning. And I think it's a great archive of kind of showing and sharing where we are with what we're trying to work with educators on. And we moved to creating these videos after we knew we really had to not only do webinars, but also support them with strategic how-tos. And I think you'll see a number of those how-tos in there, everything from how to access a Google Meet, to how to set up a Google Classroom, to just simple things like how to share a resource. So if you get an opportunity, check out the digital learning video page. And that was something we worked pretty steadily on as we closed the remote learning period, because we knew to think strategically moving forward, we also would want to reflect. In terms of one-to-one and personalized learning, of course, the one-to-one program in grades 7 through 12 enabled enhanced learning opportunities for students during remote learning and also during the school year. We're currently planning the next layer of one-to-one devices to 7th grade classes in the fall, and also planning on a one-to-one learning environment in the traditional classroom setting in 6th grade. And we're also, our commitment to personalized learning continues to support our district educators with a reflective practice and use of digital tools to modify instruction and support assessment with digital tools. And the digital learning's team's support for one-to-one learning also keeps us professionally peaked and on target with progressive learning models and knowledge of the most up-to-date digital tools and resources. As much as remote learning has been difficult, it's also provided us an opportunity to stay right on task with what's the next best thing we can provide our educators in the district. And it's been great to be able to reflect not only with the educators, but also with my team as well, and also raise the bar in how we service everybody. Of course, computer science, robotics curriculum development. So right in the month of May, and as we moved into June, NRPS was a recipient of the Script Digital Learning CS Planning Grant, which was a middle school focused grant. But the great part about this grant was it enabled us to work K-12. So I was able to pull together high school computer science educators. I was able to pull together elementary computer science educator, and of course, middle school computer science educators to work strategically to do some strategic planning and visioning around some of the key areas that we want to look to integrate in the next couple of years, actually. And some of the benefits of this grant, not only did it provide funds for teachers to go off and do professional development this summer to support their work back in the classroom in the fall, but we were also able to utilize some of the resources to purchase some laptops for our robotics program. So not only did the program help us prepare our vision for what we want in CS programming K through 12, but we also had an opportunity to actually provide some hardware support and also think strategically during a time when many people were working remotely. So it kind of grounded us as a team and gave us, kind of that looking forward and continuing to vision, like, what will it be like when we return to the classroom? What are some exciting things that we really want to kind of put into place? And I thought it was a huge opportunity, and it was almost at the right time as we were slowing down in remote learning. People were kind of itching to kind of get back to normalcy on some level. This really, at least on the level of strategic planning with my team, provided a little bit of that base. And right now, currently, we just started the curriculum development work for this next 7th grade computer science course and the revamp of the middle school robotics course. And we're doing a great collaborative job of working together to bring those courses to fruition for the fall. So in the big picture background of digital learning, supporting and maintaining the infrastructure of not only the resources, how we connect, and also the security of our infrastructure is very important. Not only did we acquire E-rate funding to help support access to our internet and help reduce cost, but we also look to provide as many opportunities as we can to educate all educators, students, and also our community on the key topics of digital citizenship. And we also identify and mitigate data security and student data privacy concerns. And we also continue to utilize single sign-on portals to support the streamlining of our resources and student login processes, which can come in very handy when students, start to work off campus, in campus, and also just single sign-on options for resources, cleans up and streamlines a lot of access for students and makes it simple. An important part of all of this is maintaining a safe, filtered network for our staff and students on and off campus. And we utilize some amazing tools, OpenDNS, to help us be able to do that so that we have the freedom and flexibility to learn from anywhere is a huge component of that. And we also continue to monitor and review our systems for the best practices and usability, which is key with technology in general. We really can never really take our eye off the ball with technology. And I appreciate all that we kind of do that. It's very important. Things are constantly changing. So I just wanted to let you know that I'm mindful of that constant change. And one thing that we did have a huge opportunity with expanding our skill set with was also providing remote and on-site technical support for hardware and software. So our team found new ways to connect with parents and students during the time of remote learning and build some best practices so that if we need to utilize that type of support again, it's available to us and we have some best practices in place. So thank you for your time with this presentation, and I look forward to your questions and opportunities going into the new year, even with the challenges ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brown. And just so everybody understands how we're going to try to do this, so for each topic, I would love if the public does have questions in the chat box, if you'll just type your name, or if you have a specific question you would just rather me read, you can put it in there. I'm going to ask the committee members if they have any thoughts first, and our student representative who's with us still, if they have any questions, and then we'll go to the public comments and questions. So I'll sort of go around first. I'll start with Mr. McGowan. Any thoughts or questions for Dr. Downs?
Dr. Downs, thank you for that. It was obviously a very challenging year. Our last 4 months of the year, it sounds like it was just a tremendous amount of work, so I appreciate that. I guess I don't really have any questions. Oh, I know that you guys were in the middle of rolling out some cybersecurity stuff. Where did that all come into play as the school closures and remote learning began?
So the cybersecurity actually was able to start at the beginning of the year. So we actually had a nice phase where teachers were notifying us of some of the emails and some of the responses from the phony cybersecurity messages they were getting. Yep. And as that continued, I think it actually was effective at keeping people on alert for messages they might receive in their inbox. And I know from my role and also the support role, we were able to actively respond to people as they had concerns regarding these emails and kind of inform them. And I really feel like as a district, many people learned how to become more on alert for types of issues that might come through an email and how to protect themselves. And it became an opportunity to also educate them and tell them, some of the what to look for. So I do feel like that grant and that ability to put that into place, we had enough months where it actually began to put into place and educate people so that even when we went remote, they continued to kind of notify us, and it stayed on the front burner.
That's great. Thanks.
Mrs. Imbriano, any comments or questions? Can you find the button?
I found the button. Yay. Sorry, sometimes it takes a minute. I just wanted to thank you for all your hard work. It must have been like crazy these last couple of months. So I just wanted to echo some of what Rich said and give you a big thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your support. I mean, it was definitely a transformative time. I mean, as much as it was difficult on a lot of people, I think we also jumped some hurdles that we, in terms of our learning and working with others and developing our layers of collaboration remotely, that I think will be very beneficial in the long run.
Okay. Mrs. Botwell, any comments or questions?
I don't have any questions. Of course, I am just as thankful. I think there was so much effort that went into the spring and just even planning as we move forward. So I greatly appreciate that as a committee member and as a parent. So thank you.
Mr. Papavassiliou?
Sure. I just have one question, which is that looking ahead for the fall, were there any families in over the last few months where they had kids that were too young to qualify for one-to-one and they had issues with devices or didn't have enough to suit several kids' needs at home? Anything we need to look out for in the fall that could use awareness or support?
Well, I think we'll put something out in the fall just to kind of double check and make sure that everyone who needs a device has a device, just in case there is anyone out there who needs a device. We've enabled the devices to stay home for the summer. So I'm hoping, that, everyone who needs a device has a device as we close the year. If there's any concerns around needing a device, I encourage people to, connect with me directly if they have a need. I think right now we're in a good position where we, as we need, we can provide them with something to kind of help support them in the fall. So if someone has a need, I welcome them to reach out to me.
Great, thank you.
I'll save my questions for, and I'll let Shivy. Shivy, do you have any comments or questions?
I don't have any questions, but as someone who's a recipient of the remote learning plan, I just wanted to say thank you because I think it's been going really well for such short notice. So.
Thank you. And I see a lot of teachers on the call, and I also want to thank all the teachers who came to our webinars and connected with us virtually. And, it was a tremendous period of, real collaboration with a lot of different communities in the district. And, and it really was inspiring to work with everyone and help them get to the, if I could help them get to the next level, or one of my specialists could help them do something, or we were able to help a kid who had an issue with a device at home. It was rewarding as much as it was just to help them kind of move to the next level of learning, based on everything that was going on.
Right.
Great. Mr. Buckley, if I could just make a comment.
Of course.
First of all, Dr. Downs, I want to thank you for all that you've done. You've done a really fantastic job. We've received so many good comments from parents and from teachers about you and the the digital learning team in general, just how much you've really stepped in to help everyone out. And it's really been something you guys have done for years, but I think it really came to the foreground during this remote learning period. And I think your importance as a leader and your team's importance as teachers has never been more significant. So thank you so much for all that you've done. I wanted to just also echo on Mr. Papavassiliou's comment that Dr. Downs and I are working on a grant, which we're going to submit tomorrow. There's $25 million available, which sounds like a lot. It's not that much when you think about some of the larger districts that might be putting in, but we're going to put in for everything that we can. From the survey that I put out, we got a great response. There were over 640 folks that said that children did not have individual devices at home or at school. And there were 26 or so families that noted that they had internet access issues at home. And I just want to note that in addition to those who are not able to, it sounds a little counterintuitive to have an electronic survey asking people if you have internet access, but we are using other means as well as that. But our schools are very attuned to those folks that need those at home. But many folks are able to still take the survey on their phones, as well as they may not have internet in their homes in order to do remote learning. So we are putting in for that grant to support those folks. And if we're not able to do it through the grant, we're going to try to find some other avenues to explore that as well. So I just wanted to follow up on that comment as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you. And Dr. Downs, I have 3 questions for you. So the first one is just, did you see significant differences depending on the grade level, or specifically was digital learning easier or better, or I guess more intuitive for high school, maybe middle school versus elementary? Or did you feel like there was not really any difference and elementary picked it up pretty well also?
It's tough to kind of clump them together, only because they are all using a little bit of different instructional methods. I definitely felt as where we had the one-to-one program, those grades 7 through 12, knowing that those students had devices and knowing that they had experience with accessing resources at home really efficiently, I think that made it easier for teachers to assign them work, and it kind of streamlined, some of the questions, a teacher might have to deliver, or some of the work, they had already maybe had that experience before. So that streamlined some of the work, 6 through 12. In the lower grades, since we had not really worked remotely before, it was a matter of, just identifying how we were going to deliver content. And the parents were absolutely amazing with supporting the teachers in the classroom. And, so with the K through 3, it was just kind of deciding, what specific tools were we going to use, keep it simple for the parents, keep it as simple as we can for the students, and go up from there. And I think the digital, and in the upper elementary schools, there's been a lot of digital portfolio work with apps like Seesaw and Google Classroom that has been really amazing. And some of that background, I think those teachers who kind of led the charge with that work really helped support the other teachers to start using those resources as well. So I think the planning models in all 3 buildings that they used to kind of plan the instructional processes, whether it was the team meetings in the elementary, the department-based teams in middle school and high school, all really helped kind of solidify, what types of apps and resources they were going to use. I think every layer, every grade level did have, maybe a specific challenge to overcome, whether it was finding appropriate resources. But overall, the teachers did a fantastic job, and I would say, it really added to, better understanding, how the teachers could shift and adapt their practices. They did an amazing job. I wouldn't say any one level had any challenges that were much larger than any other, but I would say there was definitely an advantage to the level of experience of using Chromebook devices and delivering content that they may have had it already in a traditional classroom in the one-to-one grades.
Okay, and another quick comment / question. I think for all the school improvement plans, whenever we were at the schools, the teachers talked a lot about UDL, Universal Design for Learning. And so do you think that this goes sort of hand in hand with that, where it seemed to me like we were hearing for the last 2 years at school improvement plans that they're trying to do this where it's a different way. It's not a typical book report. It's more interactive. It seemed to really go hand in hand with digital learning. I mean, is that correct, I guess?
Yeah, that's definitely correct. I think with all the modern initiatives, whether it be UDL, personalized learning, technology is really at the heart of selecting assessments and ways of delivering assessments digitally, and also delivering content. So technology can definitely level the playing field in terms of delivering assessments, and also how measuring where a student is at and finding out how a teacher might need to differentiate their teaching for particular groups of students. So I think anywhere, technology is just a powerful tool to help any initiative kind of get its feet off the ground. I think all the background in the UDL, also elements of social emotional learning, where we really have to key in on how this much remote learning is affecting a student who may work better in a traditional classroom, all goes to kind of goes in the bank now of reviewing our next steps. But it's technology is now at the central heart of delivering assessments and supporting teachers with that. And no matter, and also providing a little bit of the background, how can we best support students with a variety of different types of assessments, no matter, how we want to deliver them. And technology definitely enables us to do that in a variety of different ways. Whether it's with video, whether it's with a traditional kind of multiple choice exam, teachers definitely have choice. And I think with our professional development, I think if you saw the different types of videos that teachers created and the different types of options they presented for students, that ability to have a range of options for students is an amazing benefit to them really teaching the content the way they think they're going to connect with students the best.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, this might come back to bite me in a few months, but just thinking about budget, like what is the size of your team? Do you think that, you're stretched too thin? Do you think this is an area where, we really need to, when we're thinking about the budget and we're talking about, going into using this technology more and more, is it an area that we really have to focus on more? Do you feel like you have enough specialists with you right now that that you feel like you can get the job done with the team you have?
I think right now we're okay. I don't think we can afford to lose anyone. I think having the network specialist, having a data specialist, those are key critical positions. A lot of the roles on the digital learning team are essential roles. No one really shares any same role exactly the same. Each elementary digital learning specialist really is an expert of their building. They also become an expert according to what we're trying to do in the elementary schools. The middle school and high school digital learning specialists really develop some deep relationships with teachers around working with those teachers around specific applications and resources. I think right now we're okay. We just can't afford to really lose people. Because every person that we have is really tremendously important, and they all serve a very specific role. Some of it is ensuring our back end, whether it's our data and ensuring that we have proper reporting and also streamlining of our digital resources. Some of it's on the hardware side. I would put that thought out there that, the roles we have, if we were to lose anyone, it does affect how we function. And, we don't really have much room to kind of compensate for each other because we do have such unique roles and we're all kind of wearing many hats in what we try to do.
Perfect. Thank you. So if any members of the public do want to speak, you can jump in now. I'll just read. Heidi had typed in, that thanking you, saying these are excellent points, Dr. Downs. Computer-based adaptive testing is used in many other states due to its ability to personalize learning and accurately assess student strengths and needs. So I don't know if there's anybody else from the public that might be on the phone, or I'll pause for a moment here. And if not, I will thank you, Dr. Downs, for the update. And I will go back to Dr. Daly to move on and talk about, COVID-19 and the reopening plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Downs.
Thank you.
All right. So I just wanted to start. I think that we might have a lot of people here for this topic. So I just want to start off by clarifying where we are today. You're certainly going to learn a lot tonight, but on the agenda, because of the way it was written and the time it was written, we talked about a reopening plan vote. And so just to be clear, what we're actually talking about tonight is not the final plan for reopening. And we are talking about a vote and a discussion. We may actually reconvene at another time on the vote. The timeline is between now and July 31st. We have to submit something to the department. What has come out since I shared this agenda, it's basically it's more like a questionnaire with 4 or 5 different items. And so we're going to talk a little bit about each of those items tonight, and we're going to discuss. I'm not sure that we're going to hold the vote if it's not necessary. I do want to bring back what I submit to the committee I would like to bring that back before the 31st in some way if you feel that that's appropriate. I want to make sure that you're involved in what is submitted to the department. But the department is really using this to gather data to see where schools are and where the thinking is. And I can say, as you can imagine, this is changing every single day. So I can tell you the sense that I have now and what I'm hearing from others in other districts that I speak with, as well as when I share this. The department then will give us feedback on our ideas. And in the meantime, as we're waiting for that feedback, we are working on a more fully developed plan, which is then announced on or around August 10th. That is the day when I will be then, that is the document that we're sharing out widely. And so the department has asked that we don't share the early ideas of the plan too widely. Obviously, it's being discussed in public. Obviously, we have our stakeholder groups and we are talking, but there's a difference between that, I believe, and sending something out as the official reopening plan. And they're asking us to hold off on that discussion until around the 10th. They want to make sure they have a chance to weigh in with any of the latest information around reopening, and they also want to make sure that they have a chance to provide us feedback that we can incorporate into our plans. So I can imagine that there are folks that, if you're here to hear exactly what's going to happen on September 8th or 9th, you probably won't hear that today, but you certainly will hear a lot of information. There will be plenty of questions. So I see there's a couple of questions, Mr. Buckley. I don't know if you want to take them now or we can continue.
Oh, whenever you want. I mean, I think you can go to Mrs. Kopke's question if you want to start with that.
Sure. So Ms. Kopke asked will DESE review and provide feedback on every plan? I don't know that. I don't expect that we're going to get feedback on every plan if it's approved. My guess that they will probably point out to us if there's not. So essentially what they've asked us to do is the first thing was to look at 3 different models and provide feedback on all 3 models, because we may need to do some aspect of all 3: full in-person, remote learning, and hybrid learning. We may need to do aspects of all 3 throughout the year, and so they've asked us to prepare what that would look like in our district. And I think their goal is to gather how many districts feel that they can support in person, how many feel that they would be better starting with hybrid, and how many feel that they would be able to do remote learning, and what they would need to do each of those successfully. So that's the information that I believe they're looking to gather at this time. So I imagine that if we provide our feedback, our information, that if they have a good feeling about what we suggest, we will probably just get it approved and we wouldn't get substantial feedback. But I really can't venture more than that at this time. So what we asked our principals to look at, and so let me just back it up a little bit. We formed a reopening group kind of proactively before any of the guidance came out. That group is representative of many stakeholders from across the district. We have administrators, teachers, paraprofessionals, secretaries. We have our school nurse is on there. Our school physician is on that group. We have a representative from the Board of Health who regularly participates. We have our town administrator and other town officials. Chiefs have been involved, people from the fire and police department, our school committee members, our students, such as Shivi and others that are a part of it. It's been wonderful to have that student perspective, and many, many parents who are representative of many different viewpoints, but they also are wearing the hats of our CPAC. They're also our leaders of their school councils and school PTOs and parent organization associations. So we have a great representation of multiple groups. It's not dominated by any one group. There's a good balance. And we've been discussing and unpacking some of those ideas that are presented in the guidance that's come out. So the first thing we were asked to do was to look at in person. And if we are coming back in person, the big game changer that came out right before the commissioner released the guidance was the shift to the 3 feet. Up till now, we've been operating under 6 feet with facial coverings and in a closed space. And now they've said with the latest data that they have for the way students transmit the disease, that 3 foot is acceptable. There are certainly questions out there. The CDC has not yet said anything about the 3 foot. And if you pick up today's Globe, there's certainly strong language on both sides supporting the 3 foot and also questioning it. So I think that's the biggest wild card at the moment, because we were asked to do a stress test about what we could do in our classrooms. Principals at the North Reading schools certainly feel that at 3 foot, all of our schools could come back with all of our students. We know that 3 foot is tight, and so we're saying 4 is better than 3, 5 is better than 4, 6 is better than 5. And so I can say that right now, some of the high school classes would be able to function at 6 foot, but not all. And at the other 3 schools, they would not be able to do 6 foot. They would be able to do something closer to between 3 and 4 at all schools. Now, again, if some students are doing remote, if some students are not in, even on a particular day, I think everyone would readjust and move the desks to as far as safe as possible. But when you take, the assignment was take your largest class and your largest room, and how many students and how many desks can you fit in that space, and what does that look like? So certainly we feel we can return in person with that guidance in place, but there's still just many questions. One of the big questions is obviously around lunch. We have to rethink the way we do lunch, because once the students take their masks off to do lunch, we are told that they now need to be 6 feet apart. So we can't then do lunch in the same classroom where we're able to teach with the masks on. So we would need to rethink how we'd spread out and do lunch. So we're coming up with different ideas and ideas for moving forward around that. So the principals now are going back and saying, how many classrooms would I need? Basically, at some of the schools, you're almost doubling the spaces you need. And can we do that by creating new spaces, by reusing other rooms that may be used in a different way? At the elementary and the middle school level, we're talking about students staying in a homeroom, not going to lockers, reporting directly to their room, and then other teachers rotating into those classrooms. So that provides obviously less contact made, less surfaces to be cleaned. Student, being the only person at their own desk throughout the day as opposed to sharing it with 6 other students. It does create some challenges for the teachers, and they are aware of that. And I think they've been very supportive of that idea for the reasons that we've outlined. But I do think that there are many questions still to consider. It may open up some offerings, though. You may now have access to a music or an art room, or even subdividing the gymnasium and the library. If students aren't going to those spaces now are available for extra classrooms. But there are then questions about who can be there and who's in the room with the students if the class is divided. So many questions that we're examining, but we're trying to figure that out. So that's what would go into our plan for in person. We'd be able to say we could do it at 3 foot, and we'd have some challenges when we go to 6 foot. So for if that were to change, or if for any reason we couldn't do the 3 foot and we had to go to some sort of hybrid, we would be talking about different models. From our survey data that was sent out, the reopening group worked on a survey that was sent to staff and to students. We asked our community. We had a large number of responses. About 1,700 families responded, which is just about everybody. There's more students than that, but remember there are multiple students in each family, so in many families. So 1,700 is a great return rate for that number. And there was pretty much a divide. We talked about doing for hybrid a 1 week on, 1 week off solution. We talked about doing it every other day, where you might have students Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday, or something like that, following a green gold. And then we also talked about doing some sort of AM, PM. And we've gone down the road with many different ideas. And our hybrid plan that we most likely would be going forward with would be an AM, PM. Again, this is only if we were to go to hybrid. The idea most likely that we would follow would be we would have some students in the building in the morning, and we would then be able to go to a remote learning before lunch. This is just one idea that we're thinking about. Therefore, eliminating the need to go to the 6 feet of distancing, because we wouldn't be there for lunch, and then students would be home for lunch and would do some classes remotely in the afternoon. So that's one thought and one approach that we're taking with hybrid that we're thinking through. By going to the AM, PM, it also, if we did need to get into something where we had to be more than 3 foot all the time, by thinking in terms of a hybrid that way, we could also think about having one cohort in the morning and one cohort in the afternoon that then flips. That's not our preferred option, but by already setting the mindset of an AM, PM, we are now set up to have that kind of a day that's outlined. So that is not ideal, but that does allow that with the AM PM. So that is our thought right now. And again, the feedback from the community was pretty much split a third, a third, a third. I think folks are thinking of their own personal situation, their work situation, their childcare situation, and there's certainly pros and cons to each of the models. But that would be what we would put forward for hybrid. The third question would be remote learning. So our data for the survey for remote learning certainly came in that I think we all realized that remote learning is not ideal. I think there was very few students who felt that it was, a better scenario than in person. But at the same time, we had a good number of students and staff that perceived what we did as being reasonably successful given the circumstances. We know that there's a lot of room for improvement. Our teachers, I am very confident, with much more time to plan, will be able to pivot to remote learning if needed. So again, I don't see us necessarily needing remote learning. I'm hoping that we're coming back in person. But if we do need to pivot for whatever reason to remote learning, we very much would be able to do that. And what we're talking about as a staff is trying to universally design our lessons. Again, talking with that concept of UDL. If we design our lessons from the get-go, keeping in mind that this lesson could be delivered if a student is in front of us in the classroom, if a student is remote, if the teacher and everyone is remote, the more we try to approach our lessons that way all year as we design them, the easier it will be to pivot if we have to pivot into a remote situation. If there's an outbreak, we have to clear the schools. We're now much more prepared than we were obviously before. And I think that makes a great goal for our educators for the year. Some are ready to do this tomorrow. Some need some more support from Dr. Downs and his team and from other teachers who are well versed in this. And I think as a community, we can really form those goals and pivot nicely into remote learning. So I think we certainly heard loud and clear from families that for some, remote learning really didn't work well. We're well aware of that. We're going to take all of those suggestions and try to make room for improvement. I will say from the outset that to the extent possible that the buildings are available for students who are considered most vulnerable in a remote learning situation are students with requiring special education services, students who are on an IEP, and also our students who are English learner students. Those students would, for the most part, stay in school all the time, with face-to-face instruction. So they would be getting the maximum amount of face-to-face instruction. Even if we did a hybrid, most likely, let's say, for example, we did some kind of AM/PM switch, those students would most likely have the option to be in school for the entire day. And with our numbers, when I look at them, a lot of those students, there's small enough numbers in some of the classes, especially in our substantially separate program or an English language program, that we should be able to support them at a safe distancing for the full day. And so that's in line with what I'm hearing from the commissioner, and the guidance is really making sure we're providing those students with more in-person support, because I think out of everyone, a lot of those students that I'm speaking of in those categories certainly didn't respond as well to remote learning as others. Not saying all, but some of them certainly had some challenges. And so we want to be very aware to provide for those students as well. So those are the three plans, and those are the three ideas around what we're looking to do with those plans. There would be things like grades. So we were very clear last time that this was not graded, and there were some differences. If we were to go to remote learning, we would do those things differently. And that directive would also come from the state level, just as the directive to not have grading and to not move too far ahead with content came from the state. They are now already saying if we do pivot to remote learning this year, that we certainly want to have some of those things in place. And I think all of our teachers felt that the students participated. Even though everyone has expressed that it was challenging, our participation rates and our engagement of students was excellent. I was in classes the very last weeks of school full of students who were having wonderful discussions and great lessons where, I felt I'm going in, I'm learning things, the kids are learning. It's great. I think everyone was certainly burnt out by June, but I think we have to applaud our parents and our teachers and our administrators for having a great plan and getting kids engaged for the year. So I think it's fair to say, because people have asked, our plan, our teachers union, that I've met with them through our reopening group and also through some separate groups, our administrative team, we are all on board with trying to get as many kids back safely as possible in person. I think we agree that's the best way to do this, but there's certain information that we still need to follow up on and to figure out. So that is the overview of the 3 different plans and what's due to the department on July 31st, but I'm certainly available for any questions that may be out there at this time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daly. So we'll do the same thing we did before. If anybody has any questions they would like to type in, they can feel free. If you want to speak, just type your name in, or at the end, I'll pause if somebody's on the phone. But I'll just ask the committee first if there's any questions. I think we've heard some of this before at other meetings, but Mr. McGowan, I'll start. Do you have any additional comments or thoughts, questions?
Yeah, no questions. Thanks for that outline, Dr. Daly. I would just point out that one thing I've learned, in my 2+ years or 2 years on the committee, did not realize, or it didn't really come across as much as we have in the last couple months, how much of this work is coordinated through the State Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, or DESE as we refer to it. And I think that's something for everyone to keep in mind, that the district is beholden to follow the guidelines from the state. So while at the same time sort of trying to keep obviously everyone's primary thought is with the best interest of students, but also parents' opinions as well. But I think that was the thing that I'm learning the most is just how influential the state is in this process. So I hope everyone keeps that in mind.
Thank you. Mrs. Imbriano?
No, not so much questions, just, a comment. Like I said earlier, I've been sitting in on these meetings just to follow along, and the work he's done is phenomenal. I'm not quite sure, how he gets it all done. So just wanted to say thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Buckley, should I take the question? I didn't speak to the PPE. Sure. I just want to be very clear. We've done a great job. Michael Connolly obviously has been looking at the PPE. I mean, if I could show you the amount of emails I get with folks selling PPE to us, but we were very ahead of the game. We've ordered masks for students, PPE, protective equipment for the nurses. We kind of spearheaded a group of local districts to order some clear masks it's not going to be necessarily, not every mask that we have is clear, but we did order quite a bit, sort of that universal design approach again, that a clear mask allows students who we need to see their faces. And for teachers, we have some teachers and students that are either visually impaired or audibly impaired, and they want to be able to communicate, and the clear masks are a great solution. So we have some of those as well. We certainly are outfitting our nurses' offices. If you looked at the protocols, our nurses' offices are going to be separate and distinct from a COVID incubation, or I'm sorry, I keep saying that, a COVID containment place if students test positive. And so we certainly have those as well. So the question here is just about medical staff for the fall. We did receive some funding for support around $50,000, much smaller than a lot of other places, but we're looking to use that to support digital learning and also some additional nursing staff. And I'm in conversations with many officials and with Michael Connolly as well to try to get some plan for some floater nurse supervision and support for this year. So we certainly will have that. There is something that's not in the guidance anymore, and it's sort of out of favor at the moment, is this idea of taking temperatures at the door. That piece of it has certainly changed as the guidance has come out, but we certainly do need some nursing support. Students and families and staff as well overwhelmingly said that they have access to cloth masks or masks at home. So students would have masks that they would wear into the building during the day. But we will have some other supplies on hand. We're going to have massive amounts of cleaning disinfectant products, hand sanitizer, and all of that's going to be very clear and laid out. But I can assure you that we are well ahead of all that. We've actually been doing that since March, but we have additional sanitizing. We have additional cleaning. We're going to contract out for additional cleaning in addition to the great work our custodial team does, because we feel this is sort of above and beyond. So we're doing that as well. So in addition to that, we are also anticipating some COVID relief funds that will additionally be coming in that will cover the cost of some of these items, which is very much needed. And I did mention earlier as well a technology grant that hopefully we can put in for as well to get some assistance with the device and the cost there. So I just wanted to clarify that for everyone as well.
Thank you, Dr. Daly. Mrs. Boutwell, anything?
Yeah, so I had just a couple of questions and a comment, and then before we close sort of the public comment on this topic, I received a letter of someone that would have liked to attend the committee tonight to speak. It will take me a few minutes to read through the letter, but I promised her I would do that, so I'd like to do that towards the end. But speaking for myself, Dr. Daly, I just had a quick question. I didn't get the opportunity to ask this in this morning's meeting, but some of the data that you looked at in terms of the feedback around remote learning, was there any cut of the data around the grades of the school, for example, looking at feedback from elementary school versus high school and middle school?
So we're still in the process of disaggregating that. Parents did have the opportunity to report on more than one student. And so when we look at what worked well, that's what I'm working on with the principals now, is to disaggregate it a little bit, to look at that data by school. And we could even get more micro than that, but at least for now, we're going to look at it by school, because that was something that the reopening group, the parents on that group brought forward as being a real, they felt in some cases it worked better at one level than another, for example. And so we wanted to disaggregate. So we are able to do that. I don't have that to share out yet by school, but I do have that, and we are doing that as a team.
Okay. No, that's great to hear, because I do know, I think that probably will be very telling. I think it works quite well for certain grades and then disintegrates more for some of the younger grades.
Yes.
And then I know that there is so much going on right now with this planning. I mean, just even to see how far we are in the summer, and things are still, in flux and just going through DESE's sort of process. I'm just sort of wondering, is there truly enough time? I mean, there's a lot of dialogue around remote learning is going to be optimized for the coming school year. We have more time to do that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that starting now? The school year feels like it's going to come upon us very quickly. And I'm just curious, is there truly enough time to do all this other planning? And I'm sure teachers are involved in that as well. And then asked to, optimize the remote learning to make sure that it's really fitting the needs of the students at large.
Sure. So, I mean, I'm going to answer this a little bit as a reading the tea leaves kind of response. I certainly felt a strong push. I think originally we were thinking it had to be hybrid, because the only way to get 6 foot back, 6 foot of distancing, was to do some kind of hybrid. Then when they came out with the 3 foot guidance, I certainly felt, as did many other districts, that, we might be going back in person. This is what it might look like. I think the longer this goes on, because there's been some pushback on the 3 foot from various constituents, because, and I'm not saying in North Reading, I'm saying across the state. And I think because there's also just some concerns about the timing and those things. I'm hearing from a lot of districts about that if they had to choose one right now, it would be hybrid to start the year. And that's what they're proposing. And the way that looks, we originally were told, 85 to 90% of what we were told would be directive. A lot of it has now been left up to individual districts. So there are some differences from district to district. A lot of the superintendents are trying to come together to make decisions about what things look like, about what expectations look like, and we're trying to do that to the best of our ability. But I am sensing a lot of districts still leaning towards a hybrid at this point. That might all change tomorrow when I'm in my next meeting with folks, because it is changing quite a bit. I do appreciate what you're saying too about, the timing of it. It's very difficult to come up with a plan, but they're trying to get that sweet spot. I guess that's where the August 10th is coming from, because we do have the benefit in North Reading of not starting till after Labor Day. I think others that are starting in late August are really feeling the crunch that a decision has to be made. And so, I think we will benefit a little bit from some of those decisions. I will say that there is certainly proposals from the Mass Teachers Association. And one of the main things that's in their proposal speaks to a phased reopening. And a lot of us in the superintendent role, and it's certainly in North Reading, and I've talked with our Teachers Association, I can see why that would be a good idea, just like we phased into other things. The concept of even though we all agree that we want to bring all students back in person if possible, to do that, have all the teachers and staff start on September 8th, and all the students, 2,500 students, show up the next morning on September 9th, with 1 day of basically the teachers understanding what the room is going to look like, and the way to enter the building, and the way to walk, and what lunch looks like, is quite an ask. And so I think we're going to probably hear at the state level some suggestions about ways to phase this in a little bit. And I'm also thinking that at a local level, we may be able to do something that allows us a small amount of time. Again, not a large amount of time, but a few days, maybe up to a couple of weeks, something like that, to slowly phase in to something more that's all district. So that's where I am here on July 20th. That could change, but that's where I'm thinking right now. And I shared that with our reopening group, this concept of a phase in, and I think we heard, there's certainly people on that call who are very strong advocates for, nothing but in person is acceptable. And even some of those voices said today that they could see the value of introducing things in a careful, phased way. So that, at the moment, that's my thinking right now, that we might come out. That's sort of a, again, much more to come before August 10th, but that's where our thinking is at the moment.
No, I appreciate that. And I bring it up because I think a lot of us in our gut have this feeling that there is a high probability that we will be pulling the plug and going remote. So it's almost wanting to ensure that planning is taking place as well. If, we hit flu season and all of a sudden we're home again, and hoping that the program for those that it didn't work so well for would be optimized in some way.
Exactly. And my gut is that if that's going to happen, it's going to happen in the flu season, so I want to get as many face-to-face hours, days as we can in September and October before that happens, to establish those relationships. Because one thing that was clearly said to us was, trying to do that with a brand new class of students, new relationships, is difficult to start remote. I think why the places where it was successful, it was because we already had those relationships with the students and the teachers with the students. So the more that we can build that foundation in the fall, the better. So I do hope we can do that if we have to shift to remote, before we do that.
Okay, great. And the only last thing was just a comment for consideration. I know that we're thinking about the vulnerable population of students that may be on an IEP or an inclusive classroom. I think there's a whole group of students where remote learning really doesn't work for them very well. They may be on an IEP, but that, the integration with, a regular classroom is really, really important to their development. And so I think that we need to think more broadly about the various, it's hard, everyone's different as a student, but, how that would be perceived for a child that, has to go to school longer than the rest of the class because they are on an IEP, and feeling very separated in that way, shape, and form. So I think that, that whole cohort of folks that are on 504 IEP plans really needs to be a little bit more thought through with just, school for certain folks and full-time versus what are the options for others, because I think that can get very complex very quick, and I just thought I'd comment on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can say that, Cynthia Conant is very much involved in this plan, and in a separate plan. So there's separate guidance specifically for students in special education services, and Cynthia and her whole team have been working on that. And there's going to be some real robust services for folks. But I just reiterate again, the distinction being, even if we go to hybrid or remote, that there may still be some in-service options, whereas before everything just closed. that might be a slightly different approach this year. But you're right. No matter what we do, we need to make sure that we really make sure that those students are getting everything they need. So thank you.
So thank you. And Scott, towards the end, if you would allow me a few minutes to read this letter, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Absolutely. So we have some questions coming in now. I'm going to just continue through the committee, and then we can go to the and Shivy, and then go through the questions. Mr. Papavasilio?
No, I think we can pass through me and go on to Shivy and then the public questions.
Okay. I have some comments, but again, Shivy, I'll turn to you first if you have any comments.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for all the work you've been doing, Dr. Daly. But as a quick question, I know we mentioned this in passing in the reopening group, but as a student rep, I feel like it's my place to ask. Are there any plans to send out like a student-specific, more formal survey just to get some student opinions and ideas about reopening? Or do you think the most recent survey was able to capture a holistic opinion? Because I know many parents have specific concerns about comfort versus safety and a hybrid remote learning system, but it might be interesting to capture student views on those two topics, maybe through student email or something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you. And you've said that before, that the student opinion might be slightly different than their parents' interpretation. What I wanted to do, Shivy, and I'll contact you about this, but I know that you collected some data, so I want to look at that with you, and then we can determine whether that's representative or whether we should do something distinct. So I would like to do that fairly soon. So I'll be in touch with you and the other school committee reps to plan that. So
Thank you so much.
Coming very soon. Thank you.
I don't know what you're talking about, Shivy. My kids think exactly like I do. I know exactly what they're thinking at all times. So I have a few comments quickly, and most of these are just kind of to voice over and add a little more depth to what Dr. Daly was saying. There's still a lot to be planned out here, and I hope people understand. It's not that North Reading is slow in developing these things. It's that DESE is slow in giving us the guidance that's needed. So, for example, busing is a big thing that hasn't been discussed because we haven't gotten the guidance. You know, DESE hasn't given the guidance yet on what busing looks like. We're going to have to create plans on adults in the building. That's going to look different next year because we're going to have to be very careful about, you know, who's allowed into the buildings going forward. So there's going to be changes on that. I hope people understand that while nobody's going to like next year. It's not going to be, nobody's going to like it. And everyone's doing the best they can. But in North Reading, we are in a very good position compared to other areas. I will say I work with a lot of people. I've been talking with a lot of people in the community, and you know, it's amazing. The select board, you know, has been great with helping us. Like they worked, you know, collaboratively with Dr. Daly and Michael Connolly about, you know, trying to make sure we have whatever supplies we need. I think the teachers union and the paraprofessionals and the other unions have been great about trying to work with us to, you know, to try to develop a plan. There's a lot of work to be done, and I know everyone's trying to do it. The other thing that I will just point out to people that are on this meeting is any of these plans, they require that there's a buy-in from the students and the parents here as well. Because the one thing that's going to completely derail these plans is if people do get sick and they come to school. And so in every meeting I've been in, I've been trying to emphasize how important it is. In years past, when somebody didn't feel well, they often wanted to go to school because they did not want to fall behind. I'll just tell you, you know, there's going to be a plan for students that need to stay home. So it's not going to be like years in the past where if you don't feel well, you don't come and maybe somebody brings you your homework at the end of the day. There are going to be options where people are going to be able to participate, students that, you know, because there's going to be times that somebody might have to stay home for a quarantine period for a number of days. And so there is going to be a way to do that. And so the best thing the parents can do is if somebody does not feel good, keep them home. And, you know, we want to make sure that we don't spread this. We want to make sure that everybody can get back to school. And that might mean that for a few days, some students might have to do remote learning. But yeah, I mean, that's just my major comments here. There's a lot to still be worked out, but you know, I think there's a lot. I appreciate all the conversations that Dr. Daly is having with, you know, everybody, and I can see behind the scenes a lot of over communication, and that's the key to getting a good plan, is to have a lot of communication. So
Mr. Bucket,
go ahead.
Would you like me to address some of the questions that have come in?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say next. Why don't we read through the questions, and then we'll go to Diana for the letter as well.
So Ms. Gabriello asked, what kind of communication can parents expect once things are finalized around 8/10? Do we anticipate there will be much as far as specifics still up in the air? My hope is to have that plan should be more comprehensive from what I've seen, what's been outlined, and it should have a lot of detail about what school will look like on the 10th. I think at that point you're a month away from opening, and I think we should have a lot of questions answered by that point. And I think, honestly, if we don't have the directives we need from the state, I could see that we would have to make a decision here and kind of make our own decision. But I'm confident that by that point, from everything I've heard, we would have enough information to make sure our plan is in alignment with what the state's putting out there as well. And I will try to provide as much specific information as possible. And if parents do need to do anything as far as remote learning or being home with students, I want to give as much lead time. So any decisions that are made around that, I want to give that lead time to folks so they can, if they're working families or have to make childcare arrangements, that they're able to do so. So that's very important, and I want to make sure that's out there. I want to have as many specifics as possible around that time.
Dr. Daly, the one thing that I would add to that is, if parents are interested in what some of these plans are going to look like, I encourage them to look through the DESE guidelines and the protocols. I think you've done a very good job of sending them out, sometimes to the entire community. But if you look, like, for example, on Friday, I believe there were protocols that went out where this is just what the state is saying. If somebody tests positive, this is what's going to happen. And so a lot of these protocols are what's going to be put into the plans. And so a lot of the information that is being used to create the plans is out there if parents want to look through it and read it.
Thank you. Ms. Kopke, I'm not sure if she's asking a question, or she may be just restating in-person 3 to 4 feet at elementary, middle school levels, not switching classes. Lunch is a question. 6 feet is possible for high school, so switching is possible. A hybrid AM PM schedule for all levels, and distance learning will be all online. High need students top priority. So I think that's a nice summary of what I said. Ms. Kopke, did you have a specific question related to that, or were you just helping to restate it?
Yeah, I was just trying to recap.
Thank you. That's well said. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mantier, so the question is about would all students attend in the AM and then go home for lunch and remote lessons in the afternoon? So that's one way to think about hybrid. If we're operating within the 3 foot, it would allow us to have students in the classroom in the morning, and then because of the lunch situation, we could go home and do remote learning in the afternoon. So because we have to come up with a plan for remote, we're thinking that of the multiple options, that the AM PM provides the most flexibility, because in addition to what I just described, you also could do something with the AM PM where if we had to have half the kids in the morning, half the kids in the afternoon, that we could do some kind of a switch. So we certainly are not at a place where we've decided exactly what an AM PM would look like and who would be in which group and all those things. But since we have to come up with a plan for hybrid, that is the one that the Administrative Council has said makes the most sense, as opposed to 1 week on, 1 week off. We felt that obviously the educational driver of that, we thought that having, contact, the in-person contact and the remote contact every day, as opposed to an entire week of contact, an entire week of separation, we felt that wasn't at this time as good an option. But again, we're still reviewing those plans between now and the 31st, and then we're going to get feedback on them from the state as well. Something very important that I don't think I said, I'm sorry, I was remiss in saying this. We absolutely will provide support for any students who are not able to attend for reasons that if they are feeling that they are not able to come to school because of this, up to and including just discomfort and not being comfortable and vulnerable for health reasons or for any other reasons, we will provide remote learning options for them. From the survey data that we received, there was not a substantial amount of students that are in that category. So I don't see that we necessarily are creating a separate school for those students. I think we're finding ways for those students to continue to learn through a few different methods where they would be able to learn remotely. But that is subject to change based upon actual numbers, but that's where we are now. But there absolutely will be remote learning opportunities for students who are home, and that can continue as long as those students need it. we will certainly also consider staff members that would meet those criteria as well to provide some support for them to work remotely if needed. The question about the temperature checks, what I was saying was in the original discussions, there was some talk about having every student tested every morning as they're walking in the building, even testing getting on and off the buses. The latest guidance and the research that's in that guidance, the tests often provide false positives, and they also, there are many students that may be carrying or having symptoms that are not having a fever. And so they've certainly walked away, back down from the idea of a required temperature check for every student in the morning. That's not to say we're not going to, if anyone has any kind of symptoms at all, we certainly will have procedures and protocols in place. But when we look at the latest documents that have come out, I have not seen, I'm looking at it right now too to see if it's in the most recent, but I've not seen any updates on the temperature guidance. Mr. Genova, was there anything more specific around that you were looking for?
He said no.
Okay, thank you. Some comments from folks. Yeah, the AM PM hours, I'm not exactly sure. We're still trying to refine that. There is a proposal that, again, we work well with multiple districts trying to think through this, and there's a great proposal that came through one of our assistant superintendent colleagues, shared with Mr. Colleen, shared it with me, and so we're looking to follow that. But at some point, the AM PM would, if we were to do that and to avoid lunch and then go home in the afternoon, so you figure, lunch around 11, I'm thinking you might come in the morning. But there's so many questions to figure out around busing as well, because we still are awaiting some busing guidelines. So we need to think about what that would look like in order to get students in and out of the buildings. When you think about the way we run our buses at the 3 different levels, to have multiple shifts of students coming in and out, I don't know that it's feasible for us to be able to transport multiple shifts a day. So there's still a million little questions under the big ideas. But again, what's due on the 31st is this overall idea of, what would your model look like and how could we support it at the state level? And I agree, there is a lot to consider. This is definitely some interesting times. So I believe those are all the questions at this time, Mr. Buckley.
Okay, Mrs. Botwell, would you like to read the letter that came in?
Yeah, sure. And I'm sorry, it will take me a couple of minutes just to read through this, but this is from a community member that many of you may know, Lena Simone. She's a parent of an incoming freshman, and she's been a North Reading resident for 19 years, and she's a current PA board member and has been on the PA board for about 12 years. As you know, I'm going to preface this by saying, and this is my words, there's been a lot of advocacy around reopening in general, and I think that when you go to advocate at the state level, they tell you the districts have control, and then you go and advocate at the district level, and they tell you the state's running the show. So I think people that are advocating in any forum that they can to get their voice heard. So I'd like you to know that this is a letter of advocacy. We've been talking a lot about tactics, but this is more at the high level, strategic level. So her letter reads, I'm here to advocate for the full reopening of schools. The American Academy of Pediatrics has stated, we recognize that children learn best when physically present in a classroom. But children get much more than academics at school. They also learn social and emotional skills at school, get healthy meals and exercise, mental health support, and other services that cannot be easily replicated online. Schools also play a critical role in addressing racial and social inequality. Here are the reasons why I believe it is critical for reopening of schools as opposed to virtual remote learning. COVID-19 risks in school. According to the Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Pediatrics, children do not seem to be a major vector of COVID-19 transmission. I would argue that teachers and staff are actually at much lower risk than in other in-person professions, given the majority of people that will be around are, or at minimum, not super spreaders of the virus. Special education issues. Students on 504 and IEP plans, regardless of how extensive those plans are, simply cannot get the accommodations and assistance they require under federal special education laws if they are participating in remote learning or a hybrid of remote in-person learning. I also have major concerns that these students may be separated in some way. If that happens, these students will likely be subject to bullying and will be made to feel as though they are the quote unquote stupid kids who are being separated from the quote unquote smart kids. We have done an excellent work as a district in terms of inclusion. We cannot throw that away and undo the strides we have made. Mental health risk. Prior to the pandemic, anxiety and depression rates in young children and teens were already on the rise. Since the pandemic began, calls to federal and local mental health suicide hotlines have increased exponentially. She gives quite a few stats here saying that people in emotional distress have increased by 891% from April 2019 to 2020. Calls just in 1 month from February 2020 to March 2020 have increased by 338% and so on. We have done so well in terms of promoting social and emotional learning, yet we are ignoring this critical crisis that is affecting our kids due to the pandemic and due to the cutoff from their schools and peers. Overall safety of students, schools often function as the only safe place for children. Teachers and staff know how to recognize the signs of abuse. Calls to local DSS agencies are significantly down down since the pandemic began. Do we really think that abusers have become less abusive during this incredible, stressful pandemic? Finally, per the CDC, we have just passed the 11th consecutive week of declining percentage of mortality due to the COVID-19 here in the US. Consider also that those numbers are still declining, even keeping in mind that if a COVID-19 positive individual dies of a clear alternative cause, they are still counted as a COVID death. Also, there has been massive increase in testing, not only in the US in general, but also in Massachusetts, yet we have continued to experience a decline in mortality percentages. I ask that the superintendent, as well as the school committee, please take this information into account when making decisions for our district. I am happy to provide links to any of the above information. Thank you, Lena Simone. So I appreciate your time. I told her I would read this and she wasn't able to attend. So thank you for allowing me to do that.
That's
Perfect.
great. Mr. Buckley, could I respond?
Yep.
So I just would like, if you can pass along, or if she hears this, I really want to thank Ms. Simone for sharing those thoughts. She shared some with me, and many other parents have expressed this as well. I think it's important. I know there was also some comments around masks and some of those concerns, and I would like to, just to share that some of those concerns were brought directly to the commissioner, that I brought them to him, and I would say that some of the language that's been addressed in our meetings and also is showing up in some of the guidance now is very sensitive to that, to the point that in the protocol piece, it does speak about the need for making sure there are some differences in recognition of some students that are not able to wear masks. I think that's a direct reflection, not just of North Reading, but of some others. But I do know that those questions were heard and they have been passed on. When she references the CDC, again, reading the tea leaves, if you look at the Globe today, there are 2 opposing articles. There's the science about reopening with the 3 foot. And again, if that is what we move forward with, where it stands today, then I do think we can do the full in person. If that gets changed, that's when it becomes more difficult. And I think the CDC endorsement, or I think that's what we're waiting to hear a little bit there, because the counter argument today from the pediatricians who wrote one of the articles, the counter argument certainly speaks to the fact the CDC is still at 6 foot and has not endorsed this. And if CDC doubles down against the 3 foot, we're going to have some interesting conversations about what we're able to do. So again, as we continue to advocate, I think those are the groups to speak to as well, to see what's coming out.
Right. And I mean, the only thing I'll add is, I appreciate everybody that took the time to come to the meeting today, and I appreciate having the conversation. I mean, I think we want to give accurate information, and honestly, I think most of us on this committee are pretty open to hearing differing opinions as well. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you need to hear everyone's opinion in order to have a full perspective of what's going on. And so, I mean, I think a lot of what we are doing in these plans are dictated from DESE. I know Lena, a bit as well. And I think one great thing about Lena is that she feels something, she advocates for it. And a lot of people don't do that, and so I think it's wonderful when somebody does speak their mind and advocate. And, we are ultimately, and I think she understands this, we're ultimately just taking the guidelines and the requirements that are coming down from DESE, and we have to incorporate them. But it's great to advocate, and it's great to hear opinions from people. I think there was one more question, Dr. Daly, about
Yes.
the.
So there's two
couple
questions there.
more. Yeah.
The first, the AMPM model, that's a great point, Ms. Miller, that we absolutely, if we did the switch where there were two different cohorts coming in and out, there would have to be substantial cleaning in between, and that alone is a challenge. And that's certainly, my elementary principals especially have expressed that it's very challenging to do something like that. And again, we are not advocating for an AM/PM switch. If we were to do hybrid, it would most likely be students in the morning and then remote in the afternoon. But that cleaning, sanitation in between the switch would absolutely need to be a part of it, and it would be if we did that. The 3-foot recommendation. So the shift with that was certainly the governor, and the governor had a team of medical professionals. The representatives of the pediatric associations in Massachusetts, they have been, and they're going to continue to have a PR campaign to share the data, and a lot of the research is similar to what was shared in that letter about students and their, how the research and the studies have changed about students being spreaders of COVID-19. And so with those recommendations, and they're, at the very beginning, and this is all in the department guidance as well, it's kind of outlined there in their initial plan, which again is initial. They're going to come out with something else as well. But their initial plan described how early on in the process, children were thought to be sort of super spreaders, and that the latest research that they're citing says that is not the case, and that it's actually that they are less likely to spread, and that's where they're saying that the 3-foot is acceptable for students. And so that's where we are today. The 3-foot is something that DESE's recommended, and there's a lot of discussion about, again, I think even the doctors and everyone would say, I mean, it's simple, but 6 is better than 5. I'm sorry, 3 is, you get what I'm saying. 6 foot is better than 3 foot, and anything in between is better than what comes below it. So, but that's the latest information there.
Okay. And does anybody on the phone have any questions if somebody's dialing in? Okay. Well, so hearing none. So there is no vote right now. Just to kind of recap what Dr. Daly had said, they're still working on the final plan. He outlined the basics of the 3 plans that have to be submitted. They'll be submitted on the 31st. I believe we are going to have a meeting, a quick meeting, probably a half-hour meeting, not to recap everything again, but just sort of to look at the final thing that gets submitted at a later date, probably closer to the 30th or 31st, where the school committee will officially vote to approve what is going to be submitted. Is that correct, Dr. Daly?
Yes, and then additionally, once we have a draft of the actual reopening plan that would be shared on the 10th, I would want to share that with you as well.
Correct.
So.
Yeah. So we'll keep you posted on that. But I appreciate everyone's comments and questions here, and I'm going to move on to the next one. And the next topic on the agenda is the anti-racism resolution. Dr. Daly, would you like me to discuss this, or?
I think, this is a resolution that I think a lot of school committees are considering across the state. And, Mr. Buckley had approached me about sharing this. This document that we have tonight is from MASC, which is the Association for School Committees. And we thought that it was worth consideration. I don't know if you know the number, Mr. Buckley, not to put you on the spot, of the number of districts that have adopted this, but it's quite a large number of districts that have adopted this or something similar, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if Rich, I haven't been following along on the spreadsheet, but yeah, many of them have been adopting this resolution. I know the Hornets Against Hate group here in North Reading is trying to do some advocacy and trying to really make sure we're looking at this. I know that we formed the Racial Justice Committee to try to look at some of these issues, but this seemed like a very good resolution to consider. And so, Dr. Daly, do you have it where you can maybe put it on the screen if people want to be able to read it?
Yes, I do. I just need to pull that up. Give me 1 second. If I share the agenda, let me do that.
Well, there are some people on the phone, so maybe I'll read through it anyways, just so that if somebody's on the phone, they can hear it. Yep. So the proposed resolution is, whereas schools have the responsibility to equip students with their civil rights of obtaining a free and appropriate public education, it is a responsibility of each school to ensure we create a welcoming community for all students, and whereas it is a responsibility that every district provide to all district staff, including school committee members, annual professional development on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and whereas every district will commit to recruiting and retaining a diverse and culturally responsive teaching workforce, and whereas every district will examine their policies for institutional and systemic racialized practices and implement change with sustainable policies that are evidence-based, and whereas every district will incorporate into their curriculum the history of racial oppression and works by Black authors and works from diverse perspectives, and whereas we as school district leaders can no longer remain silent to the issue of racism and hate that continue to plague our public and private institutions. Resolve that North Reading Public Schools and all school districts in the Commonwealth must guarantee that racist practices are eradicated and diversity, equity, and inclusion is embedded in practice for our students, families, faculty, and staff. We must ensure our school culture and that of every district in the Commonwealth is anti-racist, that acknowledges that all lives matter, that all lives cannot matter until Black lives matter. So that is the resolution that has been going around. And so I would like to have a motion, so perhaps we can do a motion to approve the resolution. We can have a second, then we can have a discussion, and then we can have a vote after the discussion.
Scott, could I propose something quickly? Just
Sure.
for consideration? I think I've seen this pushed forward. I did read that this was a template that they are suggesting. I'm happy that we are going to adopt something like this, so I appreciate it being put forward. The only thing that comes to mind for consideration before we move forward with a vote is the last line of the resolution. I would like to advocate that we end that line with, we must ensure our own school culture and that of every district in the Commonwealth is anti-racist, period. Which for those on the phone says that acknowledges that all lives cannot matter until Black lives matter, really pushes forward somewhat of a political stance that I don't think we want to cause a divide as a school committee. I don't think it's really in our remit. I think the rest of it is well stated. I think that's a very politically charged statement that I would recommend removing.
So why don't I suggest this? Why don't we have a motion? I'd like to have a motion to approve the original resolution and a second on that. Then we can have a motion for an amendment to the resolution and a second to that, and then we can discuss the amendment, and then perhaps we can discuss the final one as well. And so I don't know. I mean, unless people think of a different way, I guess we can just have a discussion first. And I don't know. I mean, I open up to the committee to see what people's thoughts are on the overall resolution and then on the proposed amendment that Mrs. Boutwell is proposing. So I don't want to call on people if they don't want to talk first, but I'll start with the committee members and see if I'll open up to whomever. And if members of the public would like to comment as well. Chris?
So I'll jump in if you're just looking for someone to start the ball.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess Diana.
Yeah.
Then first. I full-heartedly approve of the idea behind this and of the form that it's in right now. Do we want to turn this into a conversation that's really about this in general, or do you want to have Diana's conversation about the last bit right now, Scott?
I think we can just do it all together. Why don't we just do it all together?
Yeah, I agree that it's an issue that there are going to be some people that that dislike the sentiment of the last sentence as currently written. I think it's something that does make some people uncomfortable, but I also think that it's an important thing to have in there, and the idea of having it in there explicitly is that it doesn't get stated explicitly often enough, and really for that reason I think it should remain materially as written.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Other comments, thoughts?
I also feel as though the last portion of the last sentence should remain. I think Chris said it really well. It doesn't get stated often enough, and I think it's really a good for those who question the slogan Black Lives Matter. I think this is a good sort of adjustment to that slogan that it sort of clarifies exactly what people mean when they say Black Lives Matter, as opposed to meaning that Black Lives Matter and others don't, that all lives have to matter, that every, that Black lives have to matter before we can consider that all lives matter. The other part of this that I think is just important to point out is that for us as a district, this can only be meaningful if it's only the first step. I know that Dr. Daly and various folks are committed to working on some of the issues in the district, and that's great. I just think it's really important that this be considered a first step and not something that we think we've put behind us by the adoption of this statement.
Okay.
Janine? I understand what both Chris and Rich are saying, but in some of the conversations that we've had with the anti-racism group, it's not necessarily just Black lives. There's other color of skin tone that get discriminated against as well. So instead of it saying Black Lives Matter, could it be written to say people of color? And then that you're still hitting on the same thing, but you're including another group that is being kind of left behind.
Okay. Shivi, do you want to comment on this or not? I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't feel comfortable.
Sure. I think that the slogan Black Lives Matter has become unintentionally politically charged, and I don't think it should be as politically charged, and maybe this could be that step, like that first step in our community to understanding that Black Lives Matter shouldn't really be a politically charged statement. But I also do think that somebody in the chat just mentioned Black, Indigenous, and people of color as the amendment, and I think that does make a little bit more sense because there should be a stress on Black and Indigenous people of color before the other communities, considering they're, I'd say, the most persecuted. So maybe saying Black, Indigenous, and people of color instead of just Black or just people of color can put the necessary stress as well as including everybody.
Thank you very much. I guess I'll stay as we've been doing before, and I'll make some comments, and then we'll go through the public comments. I think I would be inclined to either keep it the way it is or make it more generic, as Shivi and Mrs. Imbriano talked about, to expand it even more. I actually thought it was. I agree with trying to stay away from political movements. Like, I think sometimes this day and age, people try to get into political discussions where they weren't intended in the first place. But with that being said, I actually thought the language was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good to say, acknowledge, because a lot of times it's like all lives matter versus Black Lives Matters. And here it was an inclusive. It was saying, that all lives cannot matter until Black lives also matter, basically. And so I was fine with that. And so I would be inclined with that. But if people wanted to, say that all lives cannot matter until, and then list more. But my only two concerns about listing more is really two things. Number one is that I worry that we still might not be inclusive enough by calling out a couple more groups. Then what are we not calling out? And then, are we going to call out everything other than Caucasian? Like, I just wonder if, like, by modifying it, if we make it, where we forget a group or we don't call out all groups the same. And the second part is this was proposed by MASC. They had a lot of drafters of this. I'm sure this went through a committee before it was proposed. I'm sure a lot of people looked at this, and so unless there's a strong reason to change language, I would say I would, stay with it. But that would be my thoughts on this one. But I do want to open up to the public. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think this is kind of promoting my point of causing diversity here in a, one side or different opinions against others, whereas the entire document is everything we want to say, but that one line divides the community. And if we can just agree that we don't want to divide different opinions and we all want to stand by anti-racism across the board, I think that's all that needs to be said, especially by a school committee. Like our remit, what makes sense. This is a very, regardless if you put it in caps or not, it's a movement. And this is about community, and it's bigger than just us. And we will divide here. I mean, everyone has conflicting opinions here. We agree with the entire document, except for that. What is the simplest? Why does it have to be so challenging just to remove that one text? So all of this is actually supporting my argument.
Okay, so why don't we, there are members of the public that are making comments, and I don't know if anybody wants to unmute and speak. I want to open it up to the members that are making comments as well.
May I?
Mr. Yule, yeah, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Thank you. I'm a little not too good at this stuff, so bear with me. I'm a little surprised. I think the letter and the intent of the letter is a very good idea, and I think it's a very good approach to have. I'm a little surprised that it's coming up for a vote so quickly, because I honestly think that it can be divisive, especially based on that last line. It can be very divisive, and there could be repercussions if it's not brought out to the community more so for greater discussion, because it does involve the whole community. And you're going to have a bunch of students going to school, and they're going to be under this resolution, and they're not going to understand it. The students are going to still even have a hard time, even though that there are some students who understand this better. So that's what my big concern is. You can wind up with a big backlash if this is not discussed further.
Okay. I mean, personally, I don't know that I agree with that, Mr. Yu. I don't know that time is going to change much of this discussion, but is there anybody else that has comments as well? I want to open it up to everybody in the public.
Can I respond to you?
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Yu.
I'm not. It's not a question of looking for time. It's a question of getting it correct, that it can be received by the community as wholeheartedly and accepted by the community. Many, I think, might look at this as an imposition and being forced on people. And I don't think you want to have that as your end result. I think you want it to be something that unites the community rather than creates a division in the community.
Okay. Isabel Thorstead would like to talk. Isabel? Isabel, would you like to unmute yourself and speak? Oh, our camera's not working. While we're waiting for Isabel, anybody else have any thoughts they would like to share? Isabel's going to type her response to everybody. So I don't know. I mean, committee, are there other thoughts on this? I mean, I want to wait for Isabel to be able to type her comments as well. Yeah.
I will share just the data that about 50 plus communities have adopted as is. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 communities that have adopted something similar. And so I just wanted to share that out. If it's helpful, I can try to gather what those committees, Cambridge, Somerville, Weymouth, Lynn, Belchertown, Bridgewater, Raynham, Melrose, Scranton, Dunstable, Wellfleet, and Quabbin have done something similar. And then the other 50 or so have adopted it as is. So If that can be of help, please let me know.
Thank you very much. And Isabel's saying, I would say the point of this resolution and school in general is to teach kids why it isn't controversial and why it matters. Okay. Yeah, and there are a number of comments in here. I guess we can, yeah. So again, I mean, I don't know what everybody's thoughts are. I mean, my personal thought is to keep it as the original resolution. That would be my belief here, but we'll need a motion and some discussion on it. I would say we would go forward with this. Good, Dr. Daly?
Mr. Buckley, I just see that Shivi wanted to add something.
Oh, of course, Shivi. Go ahead.
So far, I think the discussion is really good. But with regard to the Black, Indigenous, People of Color label, I don't think that's too radical to adopt because it does tend to include the necessary groups to target with such a resolution. So I'm not sure that being a little bit more inclusive would be something that would be controversial in the community, and it also might lessen, if this is something that is a concern, lessen the political implications of the Black Lives Matter slogan, if that is such an issue for a school committee to say. But I think the Black, Indigenous, People of Color label is definitely the right thing to sum up the end of this resolution. That's just my opinion, though.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I could,
And I agree with her.
I think I'd be persuaded if you feel that's an inclusive enough term. Rich and Chris, do you guys have thoughts? And Diana?
Yeah, I think that change would be more inclusive and also sort of take that sort of political edge off of the Black Lives Matter as a movement. I don't necessarily think it's I don't think that it's necessary to do, but I think that's a change that I could support.
I would. I find myself agreeing really exactly how Rich said that. I also don't think that that's necessary, but I'm not against that phrasing being used either. I think that it's not a bad phrasing that has benefits to it.
Yeah.
If this was how a lot of people felt that that's a positive change, I'm okay with that.
And I will say that I am sympathetic to the fact that, well, obviously this has been an issue not for 3 months, not for 5 years, but for, let's just say a long time. But at the same time, this is not a discussion the community of North Reading has spent a lot of time, deliberating. So I'm sensitive to the fact that this is coming up quickly. We had, all the events surrounding and after the death of George Floyd. It was, although it sometimes feels like 6 years ago, was really only 6 weeks ago or 2 months ago. And we had the wonderful discussion, which was, I think, a great opportunity for the community to weigh in, in terms of how this relates to our school district and our racial justice workshop that we had a few weeks ago. And while it's true that if we allowed time to, obviously a lot of different voices would be heard, but this is the committee speaking what it believes. So I don't really have a problem with voting on this tonight and saying what we believe. I think we all need to look at what do we represent, what constituents do we represent, and do we feel like they would support this? And I know how I feel about that. So.
Well said, Mr. McGowan. I appreciate that. And I also think one thing that I've always respected about this committee is a lot of times we do want to talk it out. And rather than just passing a resolution 3-2 and having 2 people dissent, I think a lot of times we want to talk and see if there is a way that we can make a change to it to try to make it where more people are in favor of that. Mrs. Boutwell, would you feel comfortable if it was changed to, include Black, Indigenous, people of color?
Yeah, 2 things. One, I completely agree. I think that would be a great change. This is about there is racism towards various different types, and I think that needs to be clarified here. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I think that's important. And I've been reading some of the comments. I by no means am saying that this resolution is politically charged. So let me restate that I don't think the resolution is politically charged. I think it's needed and it's great. I'm absolutely an advocate of it. I am stating that the last sentence is used quite often in a politically charged way. And as a district, I didn't want to cause the divide in the community, regardless of anyone's opinion. That's all. I wanted this to stand for anti-racism. It's important. We need to do it now. It is not politically charged by any stretch, but that last sentence has a connotation of being politically charged. So if we can revise that, I am an advocate of that.
And I agree with that. But although again, I would say that one of the reasons it's politically charged is because sometimes people intentionally misunderstand what people are saying when they say Black Lives Matter. And this is
but it is what it is.
And this is a clarification of, in my reading of it, it sort of clarifies what people mean when they say Black Lives Matter. That being said, I do think a more inclusive way of making that last statement, I think is not a bad thing to do.
Okay, so I think we've got around to a resolution that I think will pass 5-0 if we can word it correctly here. So what I'm wondering is, so what exactly do we do for language? So with the last line
until the lives of Black and Indigenous people of color and people of color matter.
Rich, do you want to make a motion on the resolution?
Does that sound? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Until the lives of.
Yeah, I would say Black, Indigenous, and people of color matter.
Yeah. So I guess I would say that I move that we adopt this resolution with the amendment of replacing the lives, Black Lives Matter. Replacing the words Black Lives Matter with the words the lives of Black, Indigenous, and people of color matter. Is that right?
Do I have a second for that?
Yeah, I second.
Chris seconds. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Rich?
I've never been happier to vote aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. It passes unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you for that great discussion, everybody.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Now, everything else on our agenda is far less important. Okay. Thank you all.
Dr. Daly might not feel that way, but.
No, I do agree. That is very important. There's some comments coming into that people joined to hear, and they feel it was important to pass in our town as a great first step. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and I mean, I appreciate the discussion, and I'll say, I mean, I will also personally say it's hard discussing this sometimes. You don't want to say the wrong thing, and I hope that nobody is painted in a bad picture here. I mean, people have differences of opinions, but I think everybody here supports, the idea here, and I'm glad that like I said, I think it's very important that you can discuss ideas and even come in with slightly different opinions and find, a way that we can all feel comfortable with the positive statement. So I appreciate the committee. I appreciate the public that took the time to come tonight and talk. So I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you, Shivy, more than anything. I mean, this is why I think we need students. We need brilliant people like you to discuss. And I appreciate you being here. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And someone in the comments, Mr. Buckley, talks about Mr. Kindy's books, and I do, those are books that we are looking at as a staff for professional development as well. And I'm reading the How to Be an Anti-Racist right now, and it's I feel like I am informed, but certainly the more I read, the more I learn. And I think all of us can learn more and understand more each day. So I recommend that as well to pass that along.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have the superintendent's evaluation next. So, and Shivy,
Well, we would.
At this point in time, Shivy, you are welcome to stay for as long as you want, but I think your voice is most important on the last subject, so I don't want to keep you any later if you feel like you want to sign off as well.
Yeah, I think we'll hop off now, but thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for such a great contribution.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. McGowan and Mr. Papavasilio, I believe, or am I turning it to you, Dr. Daly?
No. So as far as Dr. Daly's evaluation, Mr. McGowan and I were speaking with Dr. Daly, and we would like to postpone this to our very next meeting.
Right, and I just I should just offer an apology because it was on my plate to get, especially with Chris having his baby being born, he and his wife having his baby born, of getting this a little bit better coordinated, but I failed to do that. So there is a deadline that we need to meet so that Dr. Daly can meet his reporting requirements to the state. But since we are thinking of planning this meeting just prior to July 31st, what we'd like to do is make sure that and thanks to Janine, by the way, who was paying attention to all the meeting notes and did this morning send in her evaluation, but I know I still have work to do on it, and I'd like to give everyone else a chance to finish up sometime within the next 7 days, or we'd like to, and then report back at that meeting that we schedule for the approval of what's going to be sent in on the 31st, if that's okay with Dr. Daly and if that's okay with the committee.
If I may, Mr. Buckley, no, that's absolutely no apologies necessary. I certainly hope you all need time because you've got such nice things to say. That's my hope. But yeah, no, the reality of it is I do believe that with the COVID situation, they will extend the ed-eval data piece of what's due on August 6th. So I've got an email out to confirm that, which might give us a little bit of flexibility. I certainly don't want to. This is an important process. I'm a big believer in the ed-eval process, and I want to do it properly, and I don't want to rush it in any way. So I will let you all know as soon as I find out what that timeline is, and I will pass that on. But I certainly have no issues with postponing this as much as needed. So thank you.
And I just want to add on that note, yeah, it's important that we do this thoroughly. It's one of the more important functions of the school committee. But nothing about this delay has anything to do with Dr. Daly's performance needing further investigation. He's doing an excellent job. It's just like Rich said, we've been a little bit off and a little bit unusually busy. But we will make sure that this is ready to go.
So the only two comments, or a comment and a request. The comment is just, I mean, you want it right now, Dr. Daly. I don't know if your stock's ever been higher. And so when school reopens and everything starts to, all these plans, we start to test them, you might want to get this evaluation in before. But Rich and Chris, would you mind, I know that we had sent out something, but I don't know if I have the electronic version. Can you resend it? Just send it, and then I can do it electronically.
Yeah, we'll resend. Yeah, we resend with and the links to Dr. Daly's evidence file that's on Google as well.
Yeah. Well, I have the evidence from text messages every night. So.
Question: the changing of the guards. Are you guys still going to follow up even if you're not on the eval?
I think we should follow up this one. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. This is kind of the duty of this past school year.
Okay,
I know they can't get rid of this one. Yes.
In which case you should do it.
Okay, so we're going to pass over this
It's
one.
not bad.
Are we doing the same thing with school committee? Are we going to pass that over? Are you going to send the school committee evaluation out as well to us so we can evaluate ourselves?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
Same reason I didn't get it out, so we'll get it out to everybody and get it, and that we can postpone till the regular August meeting, so we don't have to take up time of a special meeting.
Okay. Yeah, and I do think it would be nice to have Dr. Daly's at the next meeting, even if it was supposed to be a short meeting. You know, we can try to schedule an hour or something.
So we'll get that out tonight.
Okay, and so the remaining stuff is just the subcommittees and then the appointments. Why don't we do the appointments very quickly? So we have an appointment for the North Shore Education Consortium Board of Directors. I think this is probably going to be Dr. Daly again, but Dr. Daly, I turn it over to you to make sure that's what you want.
Sure. The next two are very similar appointments. Last year's was obviously a little bit different because it was split between Mr. Bernard and myself. This year would be clear the superintendent would serve on the board. So I think we would just need a recommendation, a motion to appoint Dr. Daly to a one-year term from August 2020 to July 2021 to the North Shore Education Consortium Board of Directors. And then a very similar motion for the SEAM Collaborative Board of Directors.
Somebody want to make these motions for us?
Can we make them together or do we need to do it separately?
I would do them separate just to be safe.
All right. I make a motion to appoint Dr. Daly to the North Shore Education Consortium Board of Directors
For
the August 2020 to July 2021.
I'll second.
Any discussion? And we'll do a roll call vote. Janine?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. 5-0. Congratulations, Dr. Daly.
Thank you.
And then Janine for the SEAM.
I will make a motion to appoint Dr. Daly to the SEAM Collaborative Board of Directors for the position for 1 year from August 2020 to July 2021.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Janine?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Passes 5-0. So now, Dr. Daly, your schedule might be a little more full.
Mhm.
Okay, let's go. And let's go back to the subcommittee assignments if we can for a minute. I don't know what people's thoughts are on if we want to make lots of different changes this time or if we'd rather just make minimal changes. Do we want to start with the agenda, the committees as they are, and then just make adjustments to it? Or do we want to start all over again? So I don't know what people think.
Well, I guess one question I have is, do we want to, are all these committees, do we want to assign people to all these committees? Just because a committee, and the answer may well be yes. I'm just saying, just because a committee exists on paper doesn't mean it has to be filled if it's not serving a current role. And I just thought we should at least address that briefly before we do anything else.
Well, I mean, the only things that I would think that would really be up to potential deletion would be budget and finance and contracts review. And I think budget
superintendent search.
Oh, yeah, that one's on there. That's on there?
Yeah.
I don't see it on there. Where was that?
Right there.
No,
Yeah.
Please take that one off. Yes.
I mean, I would say budget and finance, we actually did meet a few times last year, and we did some discussions here and there. And budget and finance also was used when we looked at the LED light project. So I think we could maybe do the same sort of thing with the solar that we're going to have to reinvestigate again. And the contract review, we really did nothing. But what I wonder is if with the teachers' negotiation this year, I wonder if we will want to take some of that discussion and then just look at all the contracts about remote learning. I wonder if that's the one thing where, like, you guys, we were talking about doing a review of all the policy related to COVID and remote learning. I wonder if we need to start thinking about language that we'll want to propose to contracts. I don't know. That's just my thought. I don't know.
Would that be a
That
hybrid
could-
then between the policy and the contract review?
I don't know.
Contract might want to come up with language and then give it to policy.
I mean, I would think maybe that language discussion would sort of flow from the NREA contract talks. I mean, certainly that we should be looking at that as we go through that process. And then after the fact, we can say, okay, what do we also need to look at and apply to other contracts?
So we could probably get rid of contracts. I mean, the idea originally of the contracts was to have one person that sort of looked at all the because we have different people that negotiate different contracts, and to try to have some uniformity across there. And I made that spreadsheet, but I haven't really updated the last couple of years. I don't know that we have to have it, but the one thing, like you mentioned, the one thing that we do have to add in is I do think we should decide who's going to be appointed to the NREA negotiation. We usually have 2 members on there because I think Dr. Daly is already starting to have discussions about changes for school reopening. And I think it would be helpful to have the school committee members that are going to be negotiating that contract involved in those updates going forward. And so, well, why don't we just go down? So do we want to get rid of contracts review right now and just maybe replace that with NREA and just kind of appoint whoever's going to be in the NREA right now?
I think that makes sense to me.
I'm fine with that.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. And so why don't we just go through and rather than, how about this, rather than doing motions on each of them right now, why don't we just look at it and try to figure it out, and then we'll do the motions at the end.
Okay.
So if I'm reading down, secondary school building committee is Janine right now. I think it makes sense to keep Janine. Anybody disagree with that? Are you still meeting, Janine, or not? We're just waiting for litigation.
No, we haven't met in a long time, but I'm the one that takes the minutes at the meeting. So if no one objects, I will stay on.
Well, since none of us were here when the building was being built, I think it makes sense for you to be there.
All right.
Substance abuse are also on right now. Do you want to stay on that one?
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay, policy, the very important one. The Rich and Chris show. Do you guys?
We've got a bit of a dream team scenario going on with us this year. I'd be sad to break it up, but Rich, if you want to move to a new.
I wouldn't hurt to have different. I mean, I think everyone here has been on the policy subcommittee sometime in the last 4 years. So I guess all of our voices have been heard. So I guess I'm happy to stay on it, or if someone wants to step in, that'd be fine too.
Well,
I'd
Rich,
really like to stay on it this year, just given where we're going with it and looking at things from a teacher perspective.
Ginny, what are you gonna say?
Rich, is there a certain policy that you would prefer to stay on over another one because you will be taking in the FinCom?
Yeah, other than the only other one that I feel particularly strongly about is the Fine Arts Subcommittee. So yeah, and that's easy. I don't want to say it's easy work, but it's certainly not a huge time commitment. So I'm happy to stay on policy. Although, as I say, if someone is particularly interested, I could go either way.
Well, why don't we pencil it in for now, and then we'll just look and see what the division is when we get to the end.
Yep.
Well, if you want to step off, I'll step in.
Okay, so we'll kind of put a asterisk there. I mean, Janine actually prepares for those meetings too. Janine can attest when I was on with her.
She might actually.
I was the worst. I was the worst one. Like every time I came in and I was reading it while we were there. So, and then the only other question on whether we should get rid of is the NORCAM advisory. But I worry that we're not going to get broadcast anymore if we don't at least put somebody on there. So maybe we'll keep that. But so athletics subcommittee. Actually, if you go to the right there, special education parent advisory council. I mean, I'd be happy to stay on there. We didn't really have that much this year, but I obviously am, personally invested in that, and so if people don't mind, I wouldn't mind staying on there.
Yeah, and I think it's,
Works for me.
hopefully with new leadership there, it'll be important to have a good voice there.
Yeah. Athletics subcommittee, Diana and Janine, you guys like that role? Those
I
roles?
do.
Janine?
Yeah, I don't mind it at all.
Okay. Evaluation, Rich and Chris. Since you've done such a splendid job so far, keep it
I was gonna say.
Like, can you be fired from a subcommittee or not?
That's what the vote's for.
Impeached on it. I've enjoyed the I can't say that I've enjoyed the little work we've done on it. No, I enjoyed the idea of the evaluation subcommittee.
I think it would help to rotate one person in, just because, more people know or are familiar with the process.
Yeah.
The better, but.
Janine, would this be something you'd want to jump into instead of, because if you're not going to be in finance planning, would you have time for that or not?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. My time is very fluid, for lack of a better word. So yes, I would be able to do policy and eval.
So maybe if we change, we'll trade. You get traded from finance planning to evaluation.
That's fine.
Capital improvement planning is an appointment through the end of Diana's term. So unless we want
Unless you want to oust me.
to get rid of her, but I don't know. We didn't get much money from this year. I don't know. Another
Sorry
one.
about that.
It's all your fault, Diana.
I know.
Hey, Scott,
Yeah.
just an FYI, we probably don't need to ex-nay the superintendent search yet, because it will disband once we have a meeting and approve the
good point.
minutes. So
You better keep us. You better appoint us again.
Okay, fine. We'll appoint you again. The same people. I'm going to skip over budget and finance right for a second here. Want to get the easy ones here. I think we're going to say no contracts right now. Fine arts, Rich and Chris, you said you guys wanted to stay on that one.
Yep.
NORCAM, it's an evening meeting. I don't know if we're looking. I don't know if anybody wants.
Lasts about 15, 20 minutes, generally. I actually don't know what they've done since March. They haven't been emailing me. I think they had one or two remote meetings, but I don't really know.
I don't know. Well, if no one else wants it, you're staying on it.
You can appoint me. That's fine. Just keep me on it. It's fine.
And you know what? And if you can't go here, they're like, others can go as well. So finance planning would be me and Rich, because we're chair and vice chair. So then the only other big two are budget finance and NREA. And I haven't really taken much responsibility in any of these yet, so I think I'm fine with whatever. But for NREA negotiations, I mean, I think we should think a little bit about this and budget. Janine, go ahead.
Scott, I don't believe that that's a subcommittee. That's just.
It's not a subcommittee.
Right.
It's not a subcommittee.
Are you trying to disband then the contract review subcommittee?
That's what I think we talked about, whether we need a separate one for that or not. I don't know that we need a separate. I don't know that we need a separate contract review subcommittee right now.
Right.
So,
I believe
the question is, are we going to do that sort of side-by-side review?
I thought the contract subcommittee came up because it was a good idea to align all of the different contracts. So if that's been done, and there's a document that can be shared or updated.
There is. I have it.
Is it a one-man show?
I can continue to update it if we need. I just haven't done it, but.
Okay. So
it
is it something
it just feels like, it just feels like it's not a committee. I mean, it's.
Yeah, there's no real
lining them up.
Yeah, there's nothing that we really do or that we would talk about. I mean, some school committees have one person or two people that do all the contract negotiations, and we don't do it that way. We kind of share it and have most people do, different people do different negotiations.
Right.
So again, I think it's fine. I mean, Diana and I didn't meet at all this year, if we're going to be honest. Like, we did 0 meetings on this. So it's sort of like when you put something in your attic and then you move 5 years later and you never took it out of the box. Maybe you should consider getting rid of it when you haven't taken anything out of the box in 5 years since you've been there.
Yep. That's how I feel about it.
Right. So if you were to share the document, so it's out there in the cloud or whatever you want to call it, and then disband, if for whatever reason there was a need to look at it to align the contracts, it's out there for the school committee.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we can have that, and we can still share it. We can still discuss, and really, it would probably be an executive session that we would have an executive session, really, because if we're talking about negotiations, that's what it would really be, looking at language and different benefits, because there's some benefits that have been eliminated over time, and there's some contracts that are more up to date than others. But I think where it'll be important this year is whatever happens in the coming contracts, like addressing language on remote learning, things like that might have to be updated in the other contracts. And I understand the NREA negotiation is not going to be a separate committee, but it's also a little bit of a division of labor, and I think that will take a little bit of time in deciding on who we want to be on that. I mean, I don't know.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying it's not a subcommittee.
No, correct. But it is an appointment that we do, and so
yes,
I think we can do the appointment now as well, because, as I said, Dr. Daly is dealing with. I mean, Peter Kane's been emailing me on a lot of these things already, as well as the chairman of the school committee. He's been keeping me in the loop on some of the negotiations, but I don't really have the authority yet to do that. To speak on behalf of the committee, really. I don't know. I mean, I think it makes sense to do it now.
I think that's right. I agree with that. I think we should do it now.
I mean, and in terms of, like, again, I am happy to help out with whatever committees people need or whatever. Like, I'd be happy to jump into that negotiation if people would like me to. I don't know what other people's interest is. And now, again, these end up being afternoon meetings typically. Usually around 3 or 3:30, if I recall, Dr. Daly. I assume that will be similar timing again. Dr. Daly left. We bored him, but
no. I was on mute. Sorry. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, that's typically when we've done that, but I really cannot predict anything right now.
I agree that we should figure that out now. First of all, it is a big commitment, and it sort of blends in with the subcommittee assignments.
Yeah. So are there other people that would be interested, first and foremost, of doing it and have the ability around that time, assuming it is kind of like in the afternoon, to do it? So I would be interested potentially in doing it.
I can be available to do it, and be happy to. But if other people have particular interest, they should speak up.
I would love to, Scott, but I don't think I can allocate the time.
Okay. Perfectly fair.
I'd be interested, but I just don't know what I would be able to add to contract negotiations in the teacher world.
And I'm still kind of unsettled with my schedule, so it's really not something I should commit to if other people are available and willing.
Can I have a point of order here?
Yes.
Can we either take a short break or skip to perhaps Mr. Connolly's update and then circle back to this?
Sure. Happy to do that.
I need to go to the rest. I just need to take a quick break and.
Perfectly fine. We can do that. We can come back, decide on budget and finance. We'll just move on right now to the minutes. This is Janine's show, and we'll come right back to this one. Janine, you want to lead us through the minutes?
Certainly. All right. I make a motion to accept the open session meeting of June 22nd at 6:30, virtual meeting as written.
Oh wait, maybe I should have gone to budget so that we could have a 5-0 vote on this. I'm gonna revise that and maybe move to Mr. Connolly. I think that's why Rich probably proposed that as opposed to the minutes.
All right.
Yeah,
So
right.
I'll hold my motion.
Hold the motion. Mr. Connolly, you want to do the budget update?
Great, thank you, Mr. Buckley. So in your packet was the final fiscal year 2020 budget report, reflective as of July 15th. I will say there is some minor adjustments happening this week, some minor tweaks, some final invoices coming in on the utility end, but which is typical. But it's nothing major. But certainly we all know that we dealt with some pretty unprecedented situations with the fiscal situation and the last quarter of the year. And I'm happy to report that this evening, despite everything that we dealt with and the uncertainty, and I felt like we were able to change that last quarter of the year and adjust to some of the unanticipated expenses, as well as to leverage areas of savings as resulted from the school closure, and still close out the fiscal year in relatively, I think, really solid financial standing. So I think that those areas are all certainly positive. But as the report reflects, personnel costs certainly remained all within budgeted ranges. We were able to identify savings in a variety of areas, including our utility costs, as we did certainly save on electricity and gas, given that the schools weren't fully operated over the last quarter of the year. We certainly saved in the level of supplies and materials. There were specific salary accounts for substitutes, coaches, overtime accounts that there was all some savings that were able to achieve. These areas of savings did assist with us, attempting to kind of deal with the unanticipated, and then we really focused the last several weeks of the fiscal year on trying to put the district in as good a financial standing as we head into fiscal year 2021, recognizing that we're going to be probably still in an area of level of uncertainty, given the fall and even with the state budget, and there's not being completely finalized, there's still a high level of uncertainty. So our focus quickly became, how can we save this last quarter of the year? How can we leverage those savings? And how can we start spending strategically to set us up in good financial standing at the beginning of this next fiscal year? So that really was what the focus became. And we were able to leverage those areas of savings to assist us with enabling us to prepay special education tuition. So we are legally able to do that for the first 3 months, 3 months forward for private day tuitions, and we were able to do that. And this particular year we did far exceed the amount we budgeted, which I think will prove to be helpful and allow us that additional level of flexibility, which may be needed in fiscal year 2021. It also allowed us to begin to plan and purchase well in advance some of our PP&E, personal protective equipment, as well as additional technology devices that we all fully expect will be very much needed as we begin to prepare for the reopening plan, as you've discussed in detail this evening with Dr. Daly, per the state guidance. So we got a very good jump on some of these supplies and some of these purchases that we know will be necessary. We did do some bidding, and we made sure we got a very competitive pricing and the lead times, and we're confident we're going to get the supplies in. They're already starting to come in because we got a good jump on it. So leveraging that savings really allowed us to do that, and that was a priority. So we certainly exceeded our budgeted amount forecasted for special education prepayments. Further, we were able to use available funds to help pay items like the regular transportation account, which we were still paying a percentage of that the last quarter of the year. Some of the athletic and food service invoices, we were able to use the general fund for that, which did help us meet our carryover targets in some of those revolving accounts that were taking a revenue hit because of the, there was no revenue coming in for some of the food service accounts from, although there was a reduction in revenue in some of these areas, and we also gave the refunds to some of these revolving accounts. So we were able to kind of leverage that savings, maybe use the general fund more for certain expenses the final quarter than we had planned. And by us doing that, we were, I still consider here reasonably confident that we'll be able to meet fiscal year 2021 budgeted offsets in some of these subsidy revolving accounts. That being said, it's still an unprecedented situation, and it's, the fall and the school year is there's still a lot of uncertainty there. But again, I think, as my final paragraph in my summary report speaks to, I think we were able to deal with an unprecedented situation this school year. I think we adapted and from a financial end, from a business office operation end, as well as we could have to it. I'm very proud of the work that the business office staff did remotely to keep the main functions of the business office happening with as little interruption as possible, despite the closure, with paying bills and getting payroll done in a timely fashion and focusing on those priorities. Dealing with an unprecedented amount of year-end. Not only were we dealing with the year-end invoices and accounts payable and all the year-end process, which is immense to begin with, we added hundreds of refund checks on top of that, and we were able to do that timely and not miss a beat. So certainly a lot of work went into that, and that was really not me. That was my the staff in the business office. So I'm certainly pleased with how the fiscal year 2020 closed out. I think we are in solid financial standing as we begin fiscal year 2021. Certainly there's uncertainty there, like with the state budget and with maybe what the impact might be with some of the revenue accounts. Certainly we're seeing at the moment, bus registrations down and so forth. We know food service, as we talked about a few times tonight in the school committee goals workshop, that there's some uncertainty there. But I think overall, I think we certainly mitigated any of the hit to some of the carryover balances in these accounts. So we certainly mitigated some of the loss, and that we need to kind of see where we go from here as we plan for the reopening. But overall, I think we're in good shape. I think we leveraged as much of the savings as we could. As you can see, we're projected to give a small end of the year with a small balance. And there's just a very little amount remaining of committed and encumbered POs on the expense side, which we're getting those invoices in now and closing those out as well. Most of those are on the utility, building maintenance, supply end for some of those year-end purchases that we made. So with that being said, I'll open it up to any questions on the financial report.
Perfect. Anybody have questions? I have a few, but Rich?
I was going to have something in my mind. That's what do bus pass signups look like going into this year so far?
Yeah, great question, Mr. McGowan. So we announced kind of a deadline of July 24th, which is Friday. I'm going to be reminding families of that this week. We had a soft deadline in June, which we made very clear was kind of a soft deadline. But we really need to have sort of a harder deadline so we can begin to prepare, which we've already been doing, all the different scenarios that we could be faced with. We are looking at now at about 855 total students that have signed up for the bus, which is down from what a typical year is. We're in between maybe 1,200 and 1,250. So we're down by about maybe 400 total bus passes at this point in the year. We think we'll still get more in this week. We anticipate, might end up being around 900 or so. as we move through the week. So we're certainly down, but by about, I would say on average about 300 from what we were previously.
And not to get too far afield, but does the if we need to run the buses, the same cohort of buses, if we need to run them more during the day, are we allowed to do that within the contract, or is the
great question. And the way our contract is structured is we have access to 10 buses for the day. We can operate as many runs and as many tiers as we need during that day without incurring additional costs. So we pay a bus fee per day. So as long as we don't add more buses to the bus fleet, and if we have to run more tiers and more runs per level than we typically do to make it work, we can do that at no additional cost.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't have a real question. I'm just very nervous about next year. I'm nervous about all the revolving accounts. I mean, the bus one in particular. Very nervous about food services next year, depending on what happens. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen there. And I'm very nervous about, and I'll ask you, I guess my question is, how much do we have in the budget for rentals? Because I can't imagine we're going to get close to the rentals. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if are we going to allow like dance schools to use the Performing Arts Center? Are we going to allow, sports leagues to come in and play volleyball there? Or I imagine we're not going to be.
Right. So that's a great question. So the budget assumes a revenue of 75,000 that would help offset, the building grounds maintenance, upkeep of the facilities. So we do take several of our building and grounds maintenance upkeep expenses and contractors that work mainly in those areas that we rent out, gymnasium upkeep and media center, and some of the contractors that go and do work in these areas, and we offset it with the rental revenue that we typically take in. We've been relatively conservative in that account, which I think in this situation is a good thing. Conservative budgeting and forecasting, when you deal with an emergency or things that are unprecedented, certainly always helps. So I think that the account is in good standing currently. As again, that was another account that we were able to take planned expenses to that revolving account in May and June. We were able to move to the general fund to leverage savings in the general fund that may have been in other areas, not to further impact that revolving account. So that was a lot of the movement that we had to go through and do over the last May and June. That's why any areas of savings really was important, because we were trying to leverage some of the lack of revenue coming in, some of these revolving accounts, so not to further, cause an issue in subsequent budget years, fiscal 21, fiscal 22. So I think we did that to the best of our ability. And I think those revolving accounts are at a situation where they're prepared to potentially take a loss this year and still meet the offset. So if we lose revenue, which we most likely will, we're not going to be at the moment renting out as many to the outside groups, to right now, youth basketball, youth volleyball, adult volleyball, some adult basketball, the dance groups, which is mostly a spring season. We lost a lot of that revenue in the spring. We refunded those dance performances that did not run in May and June. That's mainly a May and June revenue stream. We lost some revenue this summer because we would run camps in our schools this summer, so there's already the loss of revenue there. But I think we're in a position to deal with some of that loss of revenue. It's just a matter of how much that is, and that's what we have to stay on top of and assess and analyze right now. Right now, I will say the after school YMCA program is planning on running. I've had conversations with the executive director of the Reading Burbank YMCA. We've come to an agreement on a contract that quite honestly does include a living increase and more revenue for us, given the rental of the space. They're working on analyzing the guidelines, and they're putting together a plan of how they could run the program, and what they would be required to run a safe program in accordance with the guidelines. But that quite honestly is the majority of the revenue that would come in is from that contract alone. There's a 3 or 4 that is the bulk of the revenue. If that helps to answer the question.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and the only other points I would say on that one are about revenue is I asked Dr. Daly, just to kind of be forthcoming, I had asked him about coaches for the fall if sports don't happen, and he did share that he had sent a letter making sure people understand that just because we voted for a coach's stipend in the spring, it didn't necessarily mean that we would do it in the fall. And I think that's important to tell coaches, because we're going to be, again, the money is going to be tight this year. And I would rather tell coaches in advance not to be doing a bunch of planning right now, because I don't know that we're going to have money to give stipends for coaches that don't, sports that don't happen, if they don't happen.
Right.
Yeah. Hopefully we get that MIA guidance soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're hoping some of these guidelines come. Certainly, I know Dr. Daly mentioned we're still waiting for some busing guidelines that will help us plan. But so we have some, and we've been working on several scenarios, but that's certainly guidelines that will help, and certainly the athletic, some of these extracurricular and busing guidelines that did not come out with the initial reopening, hopefully will come out soon, and that will
and
important data we need.
And Michael, I don't think I ever talked to you afterwards, but were you able to work with the finance director for the town and get everything we needed so that we got close to what that North Reading could potentially get for COVID and for PPE and all that? I mean, do you feel?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I know there's a CARES Act funding that was that North Reading has, the town of North Reading has access to between school and municipal and school expenses. So I did work with Elizabeth Rook on submitting our forecasted. So some of it was actual, and some of it's forecasted because it goes through March through December. And we did get, I know with what I submitted, which was immense into what the town needs, I'm pretty confident we got to the number that is available to us. Obviously, you have to now show the backup and the supporting documentation. It's a reimbursable program, that program to receive it. But yes, we did work together on that.
And do you think it's what the actual finance cost is going to be?
I'm sorry, you cut out a couple.
Sorry, do you think it comes close to being what we actually are going to need for those expenses, or are we looking at a potential deficit from those expenses as well?
No, I think I certainly am confident that we've gotten what we need, certainly close to what we're going to be needing to start the year and get through the first 12 weeks of the year. So we follow pretty closely the guidance issued by DESE in terms of PPE purchasing in equipment and supplies and materials. So I'm confident we had a good approach there. We worked with staff, we worked with nurses, we worked with a lot of folks and we actually submitted a small little request for pricing and quotes, RFQ, to acceptable vendors that had the lead times we needed and had the ability to supply the items we needed, and we made sure we got the best cost available. So I'm confident that we didn't have, with the funding that's there and what we were able to purchase, we're going to have what we need. There's a couple available sources of funding, as Dr. Daly has mentioned. There's certainly that source. There's now a new available source of funding through the DESE that's going to operate very similar to like a DESE federal grant, like many of our other entitlement grants. So we're working to go through that grant process and see how that process will work. But there's certainly available funding out there, which is going to be very much needed, that will help the situation financially.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Connolly? Thank you very much, Michael. Okay, let's try to finalize the subcommittees. I think we're just down to budget and finance and NREA. So I would be happy to be on both of them. I don't know who else wants to join. I think for the negotiation, we were down. I understand it's not a subcommittee, but for the negotiation, I think we were down to me with either Rich or Janine. I don't know which of you would like to join me.
If Rich doesn't mind, I'll defer to him.
That's fine. I will join you.
Okay.
I assume it doesn't really matter that the chair and the vice chair are both on the committee. It doesn't really matter. Or
We
on
show
the
that
negotiating group.
we're bringing the big guns in.
There you go.
Okay. And then for the budget and finance subcommittee, I mean, I think I was on it with Diana this year. I mean, I'd be happy to be on it again. I don't know if Diana wants to be on it again.
Yep.
If people are okay with that. So we're not changing a whole lot from last year. Okay. Does anybody have that want to go through and make motions on all the different appointments?
Sure.
Yeah, I get. Oh, go ahead, Janine.
All right. You know what, Rich? You do I'll do the second because I got the minutes.
Okay. I move that we nominate Janine Imbriano to be our representative on the secondary school building committee.
Now second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Rich?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. 5-0. Thank you, Janine.
I move that we
Appoint.
Yes, thank you. Janine Imbriano to the Substance Abuse Coalition.
I'll second again.
Any discussion? And all those in favor? Rich?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
An aye as well. 5-0. Thank you.
And where do we end up on policy? Chris and
You and me, I think.
Peggy again?
You two, the dream team.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Either that or if you
I'm-
want to step down, I would take it, I said.
Well, cool.
That and the evaluation. It's up to you.
Why don't you take this policy? I'll step back from the policy and you can do the policy if that's okay.
Perfect.
You want to do that? I mean,
I nominate.
the only thing I was going to say, if I'm looking through overall, I mean, I think we're pretty good overall. I think everybody has at least 3 subcommittees. Janine, you might be taking on a little bit more now. I think you might be at like 5 with this, but if you're okay with it.
Yeah, like I said, I
one's a
have a
secondary.
very fluid schedule, so it's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
I move that we appoint Chris Papabasaleo to the policy subcommittee.
Do you want to do both of them or not?
Can we do both at the same time? All right, I'll do that. Can I move that we appoint Chris Papabasaleo and Janine Imbriano to the policy subcommittee?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? Rich?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. 5-0. Thank you.
I move that we appoint Scott Buckley as our representative to the Special Education Parent Advisory Council.
Second.
Yeah. All those in favor? Rich?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Thank you.
I move that we appoint Diana Boutwell and Janine Imbriano to the Athletics Subcommittee.
Second.
All those in favor? Any discussion? No. All those in favor? Rich?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
5-0. Thank you.
I move that we appoint Janine Imbriano and Rich McGowan to the Superintendent Search Committee.
Second.
Okay. The roll call vote again. All those in favor? Rich?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well.
And
Are
Scott.
we both on
Either.
evaluation still?
I was just going to say, even though I might be on 5, the secondary school building hardly ever gets.
Oh, yeah, that's
together.
true.
And
Yeah.
the superintendent search is going to be disbanded, hopefully soon.
Why was I even looking at that one? But yeah, you basically switched out finance planning with evaluation and policy. I think that's probably fair.
Works for me.
And that's basically what I'm swapping into. So yeah, that works out. So it's Chris and Janine on the evaluation.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
I move that we appoint Chris Papavasaleo and Janine Imbriano to the evaluation subcommittee.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Rich?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Passes 5-0.
And we don't need a vote on the capital improvements. So I move that, so it's still Scott and Diana on budget and finance?
Staying the
I
same.
move that we appoint Scott Buckley and Diana Boutwell to the budget and finance subcommittee.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Rich?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Passes 5-0.
And we're going to leave empty the contracts review subcommittee.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
I move that we appoint Rich McGowan and Chris Papavasaleo to the fine arts subcommittee.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Rich?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Oh, I don't think I voted the other ones, but 5-0 aye.
And when you say 5-0, we just assume you're voting aye.
Yes, they're all 5-0.
NORCAM was going to be Janine? Or no?
That's going to be you.
Oh, it's going to be me. That's fine. I just lost track. I move that we appoint Rich McGowan to the NORCAM advisory board.
I second.
Okay, roll call vote. Rich?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Oh, wait. Janine?
That's fine. Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. 5-0.
And do we need to vote on finance planning team, or is that just
Yes.
We do still.
convention? Okay. I move that we appoint Scott Buckley and Rich McGowan to the finance planning team.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Rich?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. And do we want to make the appointment to the negotiation, for the NREA negotiation?
Yeah, we've been voting on that, right?
I think
Yeah.
we did.
Those
Yeah.
appointments.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go forward with that if everyone else is.
Yes.
I move that we appoint Rich McGowan and Scott Buckley to the negotiating team for the NREA contract negotiations.
I'll second that.
Okay. Roll call vote. Rich?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Minutes. We're back to Janine.
I take my motion off hold, which was
Okay.
to accept the open session of June 22nd at 6:30 virtual meeting as written.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Janine?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. 5-0.
I make a motion to accept the executive session June 22nd, 6 p.m. virtual meeting as written.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Janine?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
And an aye as well. 5-0. I think that's all we have, correct? Okay. Staffing, Dr. Daly, I saw there were some new hires.
I'll mute again. Thank you so much, Mr. Buckley. Just wanted to share the staffing report. I've kind of held some of the hires here. There's some that have still to come in, but we filled just about every position that we posted. One of the privileges of being superintendent is I get to interview, a second interview, and get to meet all the new folks and put a name to a face. It's been quite an interesting hire season. Obviously, a lot of virtual interviews. including my secondary interviews. But very excited to introduce Stephanie Tanian as an administrative assistant at the Batchelder School. She was a paraprofessional in our district, so we see a lot of movement from some of our paraprofessionals moving up to take on teacher roles in our district. We've hired some veteran teachers to fill some veteran spots, and also some up and comers, some new faces to teaching, which I'm very excited about. Sarah Fitzpatrick going to be working in the grade 4 classroom. Grace Jenkins in the grade 5 classroom. At the Batchelder, at the Hood School, Jennifer Belanger, half-day kindergarten teacher. Alyssa Schutner is a special education teacher, BCBA at the Hood School. At the Little, another paraprofessional, Nicole Zimmerman is going to be our half-day kindergarten teacher. Catherine Trahan, a special education teacher. Brianne DePerzio at the middle school, world language teacher. Haley Flint, special education teacher. Meredith Gallagher, a science teacher. Andrew Mellon, special education teacher. And Samantha Nelson is a special education teacher. The high school, Josh Rocco, who was in as a long-term sub last year, is now a full-time business education digital learning teacher. And at the district level, we've hired Andrew Sonny Campagna as a director of facilities, Tanya Conti as the out-of-district special education coordinator, and Heather Colazar as a digital learning specialist for K-12. So we're very excited with all those hires. There's a few more to finalize, but quite a bit done, our principals and directors this season already.
Thank you very much. Okay, donations. You want to turn that over to the Rich and Chris show?
Sure. Let's see here. I move that the school committee vote to accept with gratitude in-kind donations for the above list of school activities and expenses from January 2020 to March 2020 from the Little Elementary School Parents Association of this school year for the above list of activities totaling $11,662.36.
I second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Rich?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Passes 5-0.
I move that the school committee votes to accept with gratitude in-kind donations for the above list of school activities and expenses from January to March of 2020 from the Middle School Parents Association totaling $1,200.
I second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Rich?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. 5-0.
And just an FYI, there was an additional 1 cent on another thread.
Yep, I do have that as well.
Cool. Just wanted to make sure.
There's a third. Yep, thank you. There's a third one here. Oh, well, this isn't actually a movement, is it? This is just a notification. The big list, is that something that we are voting on?
No,
So
we're going to let Michael go over that, I think, after
Okay.
we do the.
Okay, so let me get that last one up then. I move that the school committee votes to accept with gratitude in-kind donations for the above list of school activities and expenses from January to March 2020 from the J. Turner Hood Elementary School Parents Association totaling $16,456.35.
I second.
Okay, any discussion? And I'll just say, very generous, even without kids in school. A lot of money raised, donated to PTOs and PTAs. Rich, roll call.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Janine.
Aye.
Diana.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. 5-0. Thank you very much. And Mr. Connolly, you were going to talk about the totals.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Buckley. So, as the memo reflects, at the time of this meeting, as has become a very typical annual occurrence, as we track all of our in-kind gifts and donations throughout the school year, as well as many of the, as you saw this evening, the parent associations and organizations sort of certainly annual fundraising and budget to support enrichment activities and class field trips and technology equipment and classroom supplies with various teachers. It's just it all certainly goes into making the North Reading educational experience what it is today. So the spreadsheet reflects an annual total, as my memo says, which actually has to be amended based on the hood in-kind donations that came in a little bit after the memo was drafted. We're actually at $159,679.98. And I will say we are expecting the Bachelor Parent Organization does have a round of in-kind enrichment activity support that occurred from December through March, and they're just in time for this meeting. It wasn't available, but it will probably be available shortly, probably maybe tomorrow. So in the next meeting, I'll even update the committee on that as well. So we're going to be even higher than the $160,000 amount, which is just tremendous amount of support given by various private donors, booster groups, parent organizations, all helping support athletic team expenses, fitness equipment, class field trips, enrichment activities, technology and makerspace supplies and equipment, drama and musical production expenses by our music boosters and Friends of Hornet Productions, expenses that support other activities like Parent University and so forth. So certainly, it certainly, we could not do and provide the level of education and extracurricular experience without this support. So I think it's important that we recognize it at the end of each year, and we certainly are greatly appreciative to everyone reflected, on this donation list, as well as those parents, as you can see about mid bottom third of the spreadsheet. Those parents that generously opted to forego their refund in those 5 major programs, certainly extremely helpful. Before school care parents, certainly bus transportation, full day kindergarten and pre-kindergarten, and even the spring athletic sport user fee. Many parents opted to forego either their full refund due to them or a portion of their refund, and we couldn't be more appreciative for the parents that opted to do that. So
Mike, what was
thank you all.
about 25,000?
Yeah, just about 25,000. If you look at that list in May, maybe just shy of 25,000. So just definitely tremendous level of support there.
Wonderful. And it's sad that we have to rely on the support of the parents, many of whom all of whom are already taxpayers that are already supporting the schools. But it's what makes North Reading what it is. And I think we're all appreciative of everybody who donates. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? So subcommittee updates. There's no subcommittee updates or subcommittee schedule. Administrative report. Dr. Daly, do you have an administrative report tonight?
I believe at this time I've covered everything I would have spoken to. Thank you.
Excellent. Any correspondence?
No, at this time.
So for future business, I think, should we put on meetings for before the 31st and the 10th? I think the 31st would primarily just be the superintendent evaluation and a vote on the July 31st plans. And then on the 10th, do you have specific dates for that you want to propose, Dr. Dale, or do you want to just do it later on?
If you don't mind, if we can do it one at a time, because the information is changing so quickly. They may tell us something's due on a certain day. So if we could do could we do the 31st meeting somewhere around there, the 30th or the 31st, just to give us enough time, and then at that meeting set the August meeting?
Absolutely. We can do whatever you would like. Are people around on the 30th or the 31st?
I'm available both.
And do you want to do a morning or an evening?
Yeah, is it possible to do the 30th in the morning, just in case there are changes that I need to make? I'd want to have a little time to make the changes based on your recommendations.
I could do that, and I don't know what time people would want to start. If we want to do an early meeting, like an 8:30 before work, or 8 a.m.?
I can do early, but I probably couldn't do any later than 9. I mean, I can be on till about 9:30, but at 9:30 I'd have to be done.
Is 8 too early for people?
Works for me.
No, it's fine.
Would 8 a.m. work for you, Dr. Daly,
It does. Yes.
on the 30th?
By 8 a.m. I've been up for 5 hours, so that works out great.
Not me. So why don't we say 8 a.m. on July 30th? 8 a.m. July 30th will be our next meeting, and we understand there will be another meeting after that, before August 24th. Then we'll have a regularly scheduled meeting on August 24th, which will go over budget calendar, budget goals, and the school committee self-evaluation. We'll have the evaluation subcommittee bring us down on our grades there, but we'll work through it. September 10th, we'll have a meeting at 6:30 p.m. School reopening will be discussed, and I think that's all we have. There's no other topics.
Mr. Buckley, while I have you, what if we tentatively scheduled something for a morning like August 7th, that Friday, before it might be due on the 10th? Or we can move that again when we meet in the other day, but so people have it. Could people do the 7th of August?
What time?
So I'm actually away starting on the 7th.
Okay.
But I don't think that should, I mean, we'll probably be, I don't think that should limit things if that's the best time.
I'm officiating a wedding on the 7th, so that's
okay
for me.
Do you want to do the 6th? Can we do that too early?
I could do that.
Would you rather morning or after or later, Dr. Daly?
I can do anything on that 6th at the moment. You want to do 8 a.m. again on the 6th?
I'm fine with that.
Sure.
And clarification, this is for school committee meetings?
Yeah.
So the first meeting would be to review the final draft of the proposal that I send in on July 31st. And then the 6th would be to review any kind of final draft of the reopening plan that's due on or about the 10th. But I'm not exactly, those dates might shift a little bit. So that's why I want to revisit it on the 31st, on the 30th.
And I'll just say for myself, I'm traveling on the 7th, but if we have to move it to some other day later, I can dial in from wherever I am. So.
Okay, thank you. So for now, we'll do the 30th at 8 a.m. and the 6th at 8 a.m. and we'll go from there.
Okay. Yeah, and the only comment I would add to this is like when I think many of us are following the MASC listserv, and there's a lot of discussion about who has the final authority and this and that, and you see some districts where people are fighting, and I just want to publicly say I appreciate that Dr. Daly is keeping us all in the loop on all of this. I feel like we've been informed at every meeting about what's going on, and while I guess you need to know who has to vote yes and who has to approve it. And at the end of the day, I think that it's a collaborative effort, and it's very clear here that the superintendent keeps us informed about what's going on, asks our opinion, respects our opinion, and I think it's really, I very much appreciate it, and I know that in a lot of districts it doesn't work that way, so thank you.
Well, thank you, and I absolutely appreciate all that you contributed tonight, and also those of you that are involved in the reopening group and those that have just passed along their thoughts. I really do feel this plan that we've come up with is collaborative, and we've had many voices contribute. I receive a lot of emails, a lot of comments. I spent about a half hour on the phone with some folks today, and there's a lot of ideas that I do think it's representative of our committees and the work that we're putting together. So thank you all as well.
Okay. If there's nothing further, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
So move. Oh, Janine moves. I second.
Okay. Roll call vote. Janine?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Chris?
Hi.
I'm an aye as well. Thank you all for a long meeting.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.